Dragon Slayer Academy exists inside the video game the boy plays more than anything else. It's set in a world where aspiring slayers dedicate their lives to protecting humanity by hunting down monsters that threaten to wipe it out. By completing quests and defeating stronger and stronger foes, players can evolve their characters into beings powerful enough to rival the gods themselves. That's exactly what he loves about it. He's spent countless hours grinding, training, and pushing his heroes to unimaginable levels. After raising over 1,000 NPC students all the way to S rank, the system suddenly hits him with a new prompt, a special quest, one that only he can access. It's labeled EX rank, which instantly tells him that the rewards will be just as rare. He imagines how much stronger his heroes will become once he clears it, maybe even reaching the new X level, a rank that didn't even exist before now. Without hesitation, he starts the quest. But the moment he does, the world around him distorts, and he finds himself inside the actual Dragon Slayer Academy game. What's strange is that he's not even shocked. No panic, no disbelief. It's as if getting pulled into a video game is just another thing that happens sometimes. He quickly checks his status screen and sees what he expected. 0 stats. No skills. No gear. No traits. Just a completely blank slate. Before he can even process that, another system message appears. It informs him that as a first-time transmigrator, he's been granted a few exclusive traits. The details are vague, but he figures he'll find out soon enough. He just hopes these traits can help him grind his way up again and regain the power he once had. And with that, his new game begins for real. A tutorial window appears. Survive for 10 minutes. Reward, Dragon Slayer Academy new student kit. He grins, thinking how easy this will be. 10 minutes against low-level mobs. He's done worse with his eyes closed. His plan is simple: avoid unnecessary fights, stay hidden, and let the timer run out. It's a solid plan, one that's worked before. But this time, things won't go the same way. Not even 2 minutes in, the ground shakes under his feet. Deep snarls echo in the distance, followed by thunderous wingbeats. Those aren't low-level mobs. Looking up, he sees it. 2 colossal dragons clashing in the sky above. Cursing under his breath, he bolts through the forest, hoping not to get vaporized in the crossfire. The sight alone is insane. 2 S-rank bosses fighting each other during a tutorial quest. That's unheard of. He thinks to himself that maybe this EX rank mission changed the entire tutorial script. One of the dragons, a fire dragon, roars and begins channeling an enormous spell. The flames building in its throat are so intense that he can feel the air itself heating up. If he stays there any longer, he's done for. That's when he remembers the traits the system gave him earlier. He decides to activate one of them, the one called Copy. As the name implies, Copy allows him to temporarily replicate another being's skill or trait. To do that, though, he needs to first observe the ability closely and identify the target's name and rank. Fortunately, as a former champion of this very game, that part's easy for him. He focuses, analyzes the dragon, and copies its trait, Elemental Resistance. A system chime confirms success. A wave of relief floods him as the scorching heat around him becomes bearable. Still, he wishes he could borrow an actual attack skill too, but without mana flowing through his body, that's impossible for now. A sudden gust sweeps past him. The air itself seems to pull backward. The fire dragon is about to unleash its inferno, while the other dragon, crackling with lightning, charges its own breath attack. Realizing what's about to happen, he turns tail and runs as fast as he can. Dragon breath attacks are infamous for a reason. Even with elemental resistance, he'd be lucky to survive a direct hit. Moments later, both dragons unleash their full power. The explosion rocks the entire forest, a blinding storm of fire and electricity. By pure luck and perfect timing, the 10-minute timer finally hits 0. Tutorial completed. The system rewards him with the standard newbie gear, the Dragon Slayer Academy uniform, a student ID, and a train ticket. His next mission, Tutorial 2, instructs him to board the train headed for Dragon Slayer Academy. Cut to the station. A massive train packed to the brim with new recruits. Every seat is taken. Among them is a tall boy carrying a katana, asking a nearby passenger if there's any space left in their cabin. He's met with silence. The girl he's talking to is asleep, completely unfazed by the chaos around her. A moment later, our boy, now known as Kim Ho, hops aboard, scanning for a free spot. He notices the same scene. The katana guy being ignored, and asks the girl if she can share some space. She wakes up, listens, and politely agrees. He thanks her and introduces himself as Kim Ho, grateful for her kindness. She replies that her name is Seo Yi-in. The katana wielder, visibly disheartened by the situation, mutters that it's unfair. She ignored him but answered Kim Ho right away. Still, He introduces himself anyway as Go Yun-woo, trying to save face. Seo Yi-in, however, offers him no response. Despite the awkwardness, he quietly takes a seat as well. Kim Ho then asks Yun-woo why he was late to catch the train. Yun-woo explains that he was delayed after witnessing something unbelievable. 2 dragons battling mid-air. The sight was so majestic that he lost track of time. Kim Ho, hearing that, says nothing but silently recalls his own near-death experience during that very same battle, an encounter he'd rather not remember. Finally, the train whistles and begins to move. Through the window, the landscape rushes by, and Kim Ho can't help but smile faintly. Dragonslayer Academy. The place he's conquered countless times in-game, now lies ahead of him, more real than ever. He knows this world inside out, every building, every rank, every quest. And this time, he's not just playing it, he's living it. This is part of the reason he isn't all that thrilled about heading to the academy. There's nothing new for him to discover. Or at least, that's what he believes, right up until he steps onto the train. The students around him, the staff members, even the ones sharing his cabin, none of them are familiar faces. They're not the usual NPCs he remembers from the game. Every single one of them is new. While this world mirrors the one he used to know almost perfectly, its people are different. Which means the events, quests, and outcomes he once memorized by heart have probably been rewritten too. That thought alone puts him on edge. If the story has changed, anything could happen. And right now, what really unsettles him are the blank, unblinking stares from the girl sitting beside him. Seo Yi-in, as she's called, possesses a rare gift, eyes that can translate anything she sees into stats and usable data. With just a glance, she can read another person's strength, weaknesses, or hidden potential. For instance, she can easily tell that the katana-wielding guy sitting across from them is nothing special, average abilities, average traits, nothing worth noting. But when she looks at Kim Ho, she finds nothing. His stats are completely unreadable, like his entire existence is behind a locked door. The more she stares, the more frustrated she becomes. That's exactly why she keeps giving him those puzzled looks. She remembers her manager's advice, to act friendly toward anyone who piques her curiosity. Maybe, if she gets closer to him, she'll figure him out. Taking that advice to heart, she opens her suitcase, filled with small essentials and snacks for the trip. Wanting to seem nice, she offers him one of her cookies. Kim Ho blinks, caught off guard by the sudden kindness. It's so out of nowhere that he doesn't even know how to react. Refusing would seem rude, though, so he accepts it. Trying to keep things casual, he asks if she baked them herself. She confirms that she did, and the moment he takes a bite, the taste explains itself. Plain, dry, definitely homemade. Turning away, Kim focuses on the katana resting beside Hyunwoo. He asks what's up with the sword. Hyunwoo proudly declares that it's a sacred relic of his martial sect. It's still sealed because he hasn't yet proven himself worthy to break it open, so until then, he carries a spare iron sword instead. Their calm conversation doesn't last long. Suddenly, the cabin door slides open and a blonde guy strolls in, wearing a flashy smile that doesn't match the quiet atmosphere. His energy alone changes the entire vibe of the room. He acts as if he just wandered in by chance, looking for an empty seat. Kim immediately senses something off about him. He doesn't buy the story and tells him to stop pretending. The guy's grin falters for a moment before he sighs, admitting defeat. Pulling a sleek business card from his pocket, he introduces himself as Shin Jongchul, a man of many trades, he says. He explains that he runs an errand service, helping clients find or acquire whatever they might need, for a price, of course. Kim raises an eyebrow, unconvinced, but Jongchul keeps boasting about his business. It's obvious he's trying too hard to sound legitimate. Kim can tell instantly that this guy is the type who lives off shady deals. Even as he talks, Jongchul keeps glancing nervously toward the window, like someone's after him. When Kim points it out, he laughs awkwardly and insists that everything's fine. Seconds later, his face goes pale, the door bursts open again, and several students step in wearing the sharp insignia of the disciplinary committee. The man knows he's finished. This committee isn't some normal student group. They maintain order within Dragonslayer Academy, and their authority surpasses even the government's reach inside school grounds. Their leader, a composed girl, demands that Jongchul hand over the contraband he's smuggling. He protests, saying his offense is minor, but they treat him like a dangerous criminal. The leader doesn't waste time. She raises her hand, and a spark dances across her fingertips. In an instant, a bolt of lightning strikes Jongchul, forcing him to his knees. Kim notices the precision of her control and instantly recognizes how rare her power is. Lightning-type mages are almost extinct. And luckily, one of Kim's copy slots is still free. Perfect timing. He glances down at the cookie in his hand and smirks. If he plays this right, he can snag her skill. He drops the cookie to the floor, pretending to be irritated, and mutters something about how their noisy stunt made him drop his precious snack. The disciplinary leader doesn't even glance his way. She's already preparing another attack to subdue Jongchul once and for all. She conjures a bolt shaped like a hummingbird and sends it flying straight toward the target. Just before it lands, Kim raises his hand and catches it midair. Electricity crackles through his fingers, but he stands firm. The leader's eyes widen in disbelief. Kim steps out of the cabin, sighing dramatically about how he lost the most loyal cookie a man could have. He says that the disciplinary committee owes him for ruining his day. One of the male officers bursts out angrily, calling his excuse ridiculous and threatening to teach him some manners. Hyunwoo, sitting nearby, instinctively reaches for his sword and says that if they want to fight, he's more than ready. The atmosphere tightens. The tension feels seconds away from erupting into chaos. Fortunately, the lightning mage steps in, calming her subordinate. To resolve things peacefully, she offers Kim a free dessert coupon as compensation for his tragic loss. That, apparently, satisfies him. He takes it and steps aside, leaving Jongchul to face his punishment alone. Truth be told, Kim never cared about saving the guy. He only wanted the lightning skill. Now that he has it, both one of his skill slots and one of his trade slots are filled. Moments later, the disciplinary leader retrieves the item Jongchul had stolen, a wig belonging to one of the station attendants. Turns out, the scammer had accepted a prank job for quick cash. Even Kim admits the guy deserved whatever came to him. Before leaving, the lightning mage warns Kim to stay away from people like Jongchul if he knows what's good for him. Kim shrugs off the warning. He doesn't like being told what to do, and he's confident he can handle himself. The hot-headed officer, still glaring, tells Kim that he'll remember his face. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo, ever the curious one, questions Jongchul about the disciplinary committee. Jongchul tells him that they're the academy's strongest elite unit. Their current president, the one who struck with lightning earlier, is Song Chunhae, a name that immediately rings a bell. Hyunwoo realizes she's from the prestigious Song family, the same lineage that oversees Topaz Tower. Chunhae isn't just beautiful and impeccably dressed, she's the granddaughter of Thunderlord Song Jeong-yoon, a living legend. And honestly, anyone dating her in the future? May the gods have mercy on them. As for the rest of her squad, they're not nobodies either. Among them stands Jo Byuk, a prodigy trained by none other than the Fist King himself. Then there was Han So-min, a prodigy trained directly under the Sword Empress herself. And finally came Guillaume Johan. Despite Kim Ho's teasing tone, this guy was no joke either, being the sole heir to the prestigious Golden Lotus Pavilion. After formally introducing the rest of the committee members, Byung-chul decided it was time for him to take his leave. Once he was gone, Hyunwoo turned toward Kim Ho, curiosity written all over his face. He remarked that it was odd for Kim Ho to risk his neck over something as trivial as a cookie. Kim Ho explained that his real motivation wasn't the cookie at all. He had stepped in purely to analyze the lightning magic used by Chunhae. Hyunwoo admitted that the explanation made sense, since he had indeed seen Kim Ho block the hummingbird spell head-on. That led Kim Ho to ask how much Hyunwoo actually knew about that spell. After giving it some thought, Hyunwoo confessed that he had never seen it used before. He mentioned that even after witnessing it in person, he couldn't really see the lightning bird itself. It was as though the spell wasn't meant to cause harm but rather to immobilize its target. Kim Ho agreed with part of his assessment but elaborated further. He explained that the spell's name, hummingbird, comes from the bird's erratic and rapid flight pattern. The performance of the spell depended entirely on the mage's control over that unpredictable movement. The fact that Chunhae used the spell at all was proof of her advanced skill. However, the flaw was evident. Instead of adjusting the spell's trajectory mid-flight, she had allowed it to be caught. That, Kim Ho noted, revealed a lack of fine control. If she had mastered it completely, he would never have been able to intercept it. Hyunwoo listened intently, impressed by Kim Ho's insight and analytical thinking. Kim Ho added one more observation. Chunhae's raw strength was only a D rank, yet she managed to execute that level of magic. It suggested that she possessed either a powerful unique trait or an unusually high mana capacity. Regardless, he concluded that she would definitely live up to her lineage as the granddaughter of the Thunderlord. Hyunwoo couldn't help but admire Kim Ho after that conversation. In such a short time, he had already grown fond of the guy, even calling him a friend and offering to assist him anytime he needed. Kim Ho found his enthusiasm a bit over the top but appreciated it nonetheless. Taking advantage of the offer, he asked Hyunwoo to accompany him on a small errand, and to lend him a silver coin. Their next stop was an old gambling hall, a place that used to thrive as a casino but now looked abandoned. Kim Ho approached a dusty slot machine that appeared completely broken. Hyunwoo looked skeptical, wondering why anyone would bet on something that clearly didn't work. Still, Kim Ho seemed confident enough to risk all his savings, meaning the single silver coin Hyunwoo had just lent him. When he inserted the coin, nothing happened at first. They were about to give up when the machine suddenly flickered to life, unlocking a hidden event known as the broken slot machine. Kim Ho grinned knowingly. This was one of the secret features only he would know from his countless hours in the game. He pulled the lever and waited for the jackpot to roll in. The reels spun, the lights flashed, and then out popped a reward. Not a legendary weapon. Not a powerful item. Just a water bottle. Hyunwoo stared at it, baffled. Kim Ho explained that technically, even using the machine was a violation of academy rules, as obtaining unapproved items from it counted as illegal activity. That realization made Hyunwoo feel like an accomplice in a crime while Kim Ho continued to pull the lever again and again, determined to milk the machine's rewards. Kim assured him that they'd be fine since the disciplinary committee rarely checked this area, and naturally, right after saying that, Han So-min, the Sword Empress's student herself, showed up to inspect the scene. She sternly reminded them that using the slot machine would earn them demerits. The situation flipped instantly. Kim Ho whispered to Hyunwoo to distract her while he handled the machine. So-min turned her sharp eyes toward Hyunwoo and warned that he'd also be punished for helping a rule breaker. But Hyunwoo simply smiled and said he didn't mind the consequences. In fact, he seemed almost excited. He drew his sword, eager to test his strength against a disciple of the Sword Empress. So-min accepted the challenge and prepared her stance. Without another word, she lunged first, her sword slicing through the air in a powerful opening thrust. Hyunwoo managed to block it, retaliating with a counterattack, but So-min dodged effortlessly. She quickly charged up energy in her blade and dashed forward with blinding speed, leaping into the air and striking downward with full force. The impact was so intense that Hyunwoo had to use both hands to hold his ground. Watching from the side, Kim Ho noted that Hyunwoo's internal energy was far too weak to sustain the fight for long. Still, Kim didn't want the battle to end just yet. He was enjoying the show. Raising his hand, he cast a temporary amplification spell, enhancing Hyunwoo's magic core from grade E to grade C. The buff would only last 1 minute, with a 1-hour cooldown. That single minute, however, completely shifted the tide of battle. As the fight raged on, Kim Ho glanced at the slot machine again. He remembered that most players ignored it because of its gambling nature, but what they didn't know was that it had a secret pity system. A guaranteed jackpot after 6 spins. Players started with 5 coins, and Hyunwoo's silver coin made this the 6th and final pull. Kim Ho confidently used it, and as expected, the machine erupted with light and sound before dispensing its ultimate prize. A C-rank dark ice crystal. But the reward came with a dangerous warning. Incorrect usage may result in death. Before he could admire it, So-min launched a surprise attack from behind, blade gleaming. But Kim had anticipated it. Hyunwoo immediately jumped in, deflecting the strike, though his iron sword shattered in the process. With time running out, Kim Ho did the unthinkable. He popped the crystal into his mouth and swallowed it whole, despite the deadly warning. Instantly, his body froze solid. His skin turned pale, frost creeping across his arms and face. He choked and convulsed, locked in an endless loop of freezing and unfreezing. But within seconds, the effect broke. The ice cracked away, and Kim Ho stood up completely fine, leaving both So-min and Hyunwoo speechless. When Hyunwoo asked what he just consumed, Kim casually said that it was a mana-replenishing elixir. In truth, the dark ice crystal was a lethal item. Even a fragment of it could completely freeze a person into a statue. But Kim was an exception. His S-rank elemental resistance, obtained from the S-rank dragon in the tutorial quest, made him immune. His body continuously applied and nullified the frozen status, turning the crystal's danger into pure power. As for So-min, he handled her easily, using what could only be described as master-level manipulation, convincing her with a fabricated explanation that made her back down. Hyunwoo seemed content with how everything turned out. He was grateful for the chance to spar against a disciple of the Sword Empress and prove his growth. Kim thanked him sincerely, admitting that he couldn't have pulled off that 6th spin without his help. The swordsman remains thoroughly fascinated by the amplification spell Kim Ho used during the fight. He admits that the technique was extraordinary, unlike anything he's ever witnessed. However, Kim Ho tells him that he can't activate it whenever he wants. The ability comes with strict cooldown limits, making it impossible to use freely. His explanation is logical enough that even Hyunwoo immediately understands that a skill with such raw power must come with serious restrictions. Meanwhile, the sleepy Yane barely registers their conversation, her mind still fogged from the train ride. The trio's destination soon comes into view, Dungeon Island, the final stop. The island is legendary, a place overflowing with dungeons of every level imaginable. In the past, it was nothing more than a chaotic land crawling with criminals, where no law or order existed. Everything changed with the arrival of the Dragon Slayer, the first and greatest hero in recorded history. He wiped out every last outlaw, conquered the countless dungeons single-handedly, and used the island as the foundation to build a city. That city later became home to the Dragon Slayer Academy, a prestigious institution devoted to producing warriors strong enough to defend humanity. Upon arriving, Hyunwoo is blown away by the sight. The academy grounds are packed with students of every race, class, and background. The excitement in the air is palpable. Amid the crowd, the trio unexpectedly runs into Song Chunhae, the lightning mage from the disciplinary committee. She informs Kim Ho that he's required to report to her office immediately. The scene shifts to the committee chamber, an interrogation room infamous among students, a place where those who enter rarely leave the same. The session begins with a thorough checkup to ensure Kim Ho hasn't suffered any damage from consuming the forbidden crystal. To their surprise, the results come back clean. There's no trace of the frozen status or any abnormalities in his body. This discovery makes the interrogators suspicious. Sehun, the head of the interrogation department, remarks that if Kim Ho tries to disobey or lie to the council, he'll face punishment without hesitation. He warns that even though no harm was done this time, there will be no leniency if it happens again. The meeting ends, but Chunhae remains visibly unsatisfied. The entire situation feels off to her. She can't comprehend why someone would use a forbidden slot machine unless they intended to get the illegal item inside. What bothers her even more is that Kim Ho consumed the crystal right in front of them, and the scanners still showed nothing. She voices her suspicion that Kim Ho might possess an unregistered or illegal skill that conceals his stats. She proposes using a device known as the magnifying glass, capable of identifying hidden abilities. Sehun agrees that it's an option, but warns that if they employ such a high-level detection method, they must be absolutely certain. If the tool fails to reveal anything, it could cause unnecessary complications. Realizing she might be overstepping, Chunhae apologizes. Sehun reminds her to remain patient and advises her to hurry to the academy's entrance ceremony before it begins without her. The next scene finds Kim Ho rejoining his group among the other first-year students. With his attendance, he successfully completes Tutorial 3, earning a small batch of silver coins and a weapon selection ticket. Even though the weapon he'll get is only E rank, it's still a useful upgrade, and more than enough to make up for the silver he lost earlier. The entrance ceremony begins soon after, though it fails to leave a strong impression. The man stepping onto the stage to represent the academy looks like a washed-up veteran with dark circles under his eyes and the energy of someone who hasn't slept in a week. Despite his disheveled appearance, he once led the main Dragon Slayer squad, one of the most powerful units in history. Tradition dictates that every principal of Dragon Slayer Academy must be a retired frontline hero, and this man certainly fits the bill. In his prime, he wielded a blade that shone brighter than the sun and stood among the greatest heroes of his generation. Unfortunately, he's now infamous for being rejected by a certain saintess, a heartbreak that seems recent enough to explain his current state. As Kim Ho quietly notes, the man looks like someone fighting a lifelong battle against the friend zone. The principal begins his speech, officially welcoming the new students to Dragon Slayer Academy. He talks about the academy's purpose: to nurture heroes who will one day slay dragons and defend humanity. He emphasizes the word slaying, explaining that the title of Dragon Slayer isn't just about strength but about embodying the will to protect others through sacrifice. Kim Ho quickly realizes that what's supposed to be an inspiring message has turned into a long-winded lecture. Minutes stretch into eternity. Half the students begin nodding off, and even Kim finds himself struggling to stay awake. Hyunwoo, on the other hand, listens with unshakable enthusiasm, finding meaning in every word. He admits that he's used to lengthy speeches thanks to his former master's endless lectures. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, the principal concludes his speech. Hyunwoo seems moved, while Kim Ho feels relieved it's finally over. The ceremony moves on to its next phase: the announcement of forbidden items for the year. The staff reminds everyone that possession of these artifacts will lead to strict punishment. Next comes the practical test announcement. All freshmen will undergo an initial trial inside the ground-level dungeon. The purpose is to assess their combat readiness while ensuring a safe, controlled environment. The instructor, a bespectacled man Kim nicknames 4 Eyes, stresses the importance of following the academy's safety protocols. With that, the endless ceremony at last reaches its conclusion. The students cheer quietly in disbelief, grateful that it's finally over. As they exit the hall, Byung-chul finds the trio and greets them with his usual grin. He invites them to grab food together, proudly showing off a new tattoo he probably earned from angering the wrong beast during his earlier antics. He tells them to enjoy their meal and rest well because starting tomorrow, everything changes. Their first official class will begin. Later that night, Hyunwoo and Kim Ho discover that their dorm rooms are right next to each other. The swordsman finds that amusing, while Kim Ho simply feels relieved to have a reliable neighbor. Once inside, he settles onto his bed but doesn't let himself sleep. Instead, he sits cross-legged and closes his eyes, entering a meditative state. He begins channeling energy, focusing every ounce of concentration on accumulating mana and constructing his internal core, the power engine of every warrior. Without it, no skill or spell could ever function. For Kim Ho, this is only the beginning. In truth, Kim Ho has never actually crafted a mana core before, but after playing this game countless times, he knows the process inside and out. Theoretically, he understands every step, how to draw energy inward, how to compress it, and how to stabilize the flow. Plus, the fact that he's already infused the dark ice crystal with his mana gives him a head start. Across the dorm hall, Hyunwoo is also meditating, though his focus isn't on mana, it's on reflection. He replays his fight against the remarkable Soman in his mind, analyzing every movement and strike. Though both of them had been holding back, he admits to himself that if they had gone all out, the result might have been unpredictable. He knows that the only reason he lasted as long as he did was because Kim Ho had boosted his core during the battle. In Hyunwoo's eyes, that makes Kim Ho nothing short of a master, someone who carries both power and clarity of mind. The impression sticks with him. Every time he interacts with Kim Ho, he senses something different about him: composure, intellect, and confidence that borders on foresight. It makes Hyunwoo question if he should put his trust in him completely, or if he's just being swept up by admiration. Not long after, Yane finally arrives, looking like she barely managed to stay awake. Her classmates had expected her to show up late, but she surprises them by being right on time. Strangely, though, their classroom is empty. No teacher. No supervisor. The students exchange confused looks. The class has technically started, yet no one is there to teach. Moments later, the door slides open. Someone walks in, and the students' initial relief instantly turns into dread. The man who enters looks like a walking nightmare. Eyes sharp as blades, a scar slicing across his face, and an expression that screams serial killer on parole. He introduces himself as Lee Sudok, their homeroom teacher. The class freezes. He orders one of the trembling students to state his name aloud for everyone. The poor girl stammers that he's known as the villain hunter. Then, realizing she got it wrong, she blurts out his other nickname, the human butcher. Neither title makes anyone feel better. Meanwhile, Kim Ho observes him silently, recalling everything he knows about the academy. Dragonslayer Academy is a fortress for molding future heroes. Warriors capable of facing dragons and gods alike. But not every hero ends up a savior. Some lose their way and become monsters themselves, using their powers for chaos. Sudok, the man now standing before them, is infamous for hunting those fallen heroes down. He's not just strong, he's terrifying. Known for his brutal precision and overwhelming aura, he's rumored to have killed more S-rank villains than he ever captured. It's said that when he fights, his enemies don't beg for mercy, they simply vanish. Sudok announces that he never wanted to become a teacher, claiming that the only reason he's here is because the principal personally begged him to take the job. He says that he has no patience for weakness, and that he expects nothing short of perfection from his students. His next words make every freshman's blood run cold. He states that anyone who fails his class might as well dig their own grave because he has no interest in teaching the incompetent. With that cheerful introduction out of the way, Sudok begins explaining the academy's grading system. The written exams make up 30% of the total score, he says, while behavioral conduct adds another 10%. Students can earn that portion by maintaining a spotless record, or lose it entirely with a single mistake. He adds mockingly that he's personally looking forward to seeing how many of them will still be alive by graduation. Then comes the practical section, dungeon conquests and player versus player duels, making up the remaining 60%. Students must clear assigned dungeons and participate in combat trials against their peers. Each match will be evaluated based on performance and relative skill level. The final 10% comes from overall attitude, totaling a perfect 100 points. Once he's finished, Sudok orders everyone to follow him to the training arena for immediate combat assessment. The moment they step inside, the sound of steel clashing and spells detonating fills the air. Multiple duels are already underway. This is the same event Byung-chul had been raving about earlier. The rules for the test change every year, but this time, it's a deathmatch, not in the literal sense, but until one fighter's health bar hits 0 or they surrender. Each match has a strict 5-minute time limit, and if neither side wins, the round ends in a draw. Every student must face 3 random opponents from their batch, earning 300 points per victory. When Hyunwoo wonders what happens if someone loses, Kim Ho remarks that there are no penalties for failure, but also no rewards for simply showing up. Suddenly, A familiar system notification flashes before Kim Ho's eyes, a new sub-quest. Participate in the placement exam and achieve at least an average result. The reward? An additional copy slot. He smirks to himself. For him, that's as good as free loot. One win is all it takes to meet the requirement, and earning an average dungeon score is child's play. More importantly, this event offers something far more valuable. The chance to observe other students' skills firsthand. If he can identify exceptional talent, he can plan ahead. Either recruit them or copy their abilities for his own advantage. Moments later, the announcer calls his name, pairing him against his first opponent. As he steps onto the battlefield, his gaze locks onto a striking girl with scarlet hair. A mage from the Ruby Tower, known for its specialists in flame magic. They're infamous for their destructive power, and back when Kim Ho played the game, they were one of his favorite classes to use. Now, one of them stands before him, looking unimpressed. To her, Kim Ho is just another faceless nobody, an unranked student wielding what looks like a battered E-rank earth staff, something an old man might carry while gardening. The sight alone seems to offend her. She concludes that he's definitely not from the Emerald Tower, meaning he's probably not even an earth mage. She wonders if he plans to use the staff for support magic, or perhaps as a bluff. Either way, she doesn't plan to take him seriously. As her fire aura ignites and the duel timer begins to count down, Kim Ho raises his old staff and prepares himself. The next 5 minutes will decide more than just his rank. They'll determine whether he walks away with a new skill, or burns to ash against the Ruby Tower's flames. Hua immediately classifies Kim Ho as a support-type caster and decides to end the fight in a single, explosive move. Channeling her mana, she begins to gather energy for a large-scale combustion spell. One powerful enough to overwhelm most first-year students. The moment she releases it, a roaring wall of flame engulfs the battlefield. The audience gasps in awe, admiring her mastery of Ruby Tower's signature destructive magic. But when the flames subside, everyone's admiration turns to disbelief. Standing calmly amid the smoke, Kim Ho remains completely unharmed. Hua's confident expression falters. She hadn't expected to defeat him instantly, but the fact that her attack hadn't even scratched him is unfathomable. As the smoke clears, Kim Ho looks at her with a faint, almost smug smile that only deepens her confusion. Panic flickers behind her eyes. She can't comprehend how her spell failed to connect. She reasons that her opponent must have used a dispel-type ability, something capable of neutralizing incoming attacks. Determined to test that theory, she quickly shifts her strategy, preparing a spell that even a dispel can't counter. With a fierce chant, Hua summons an eruption of flames surrounding Kim Ho in a circular inferno. The blaze crackles and whirls violently, forcing him into what should be an inescapable trap. Any wrong step, any miscalculated move, would mean instant defeat. But once again, Kim Ho stands there like a statue untouched by the inferno, his robes fluttering slightly in the heat. The sight infuriates her. Gritting her teeth, she prepares a third spell, one of Ruby Tower's proudest techniques, the Fire Pillar. A massive column of searing flames bursts upward, swallowing Kim Ho entirely and dazzling the spectators. The crowd erupts in cheers, convinced that no one could have survived such power. But as the smoke clears, the same image repeats. Kim Ho, completely unharmed, standing effortlessly as though he's immune to fire itself. Hua's pride as a Ruby Tower mage begins to crumble. Her confidence wavers, and for the first time, she feels genuine fear. She has unleashed her strongest spells, yet none of them have even registered as damage. That's when Kim Ho decides to move. Without warning, he channels mana through his staff, summoning a streak of lightning shaped like a tiny, luminous bird. The spell, Hummingbird, learned from Chunhae herself, darts toward Hua at blinding speed. She barely evades it, leaping aside with a burst of agility. But before she can celebrate her dodge, Kim Ho snaps his wrist, altering the spell's trajectory mid-flight. The lightning bird loops around her and strikes her squarely in the back. A sharp crack echoes through the arena as Hua collapses to her knees, paralyzed by the electric shock. The duel is over before she can even attempt to recover. Kim Ho suggests that they end the match there, reasoning that it would be unwise for her to expose more of her arsenal in front of potential competitors. His tone is polite yet slightly condescending, the kind of confidence that stings worse than defeat. Hua, realizing she has no choice, yields. The crowd is left stunned, their expectations completely overturned, much like the finale of a badly written fantasy show no one saw coming. Kim Ho, however, doesn't seem pleased with the attention. He prefers to stay under the radar, but his impressive victory has made that impossible. Ironically, before he can even catch his breath, his name is called again for the next match. His next opponent? None other than Song Chunhae, the lightning prodigy and head of the first-year disciplinary committee. Her presence alone electrifies the air. She steps forward with the confidence of someone who has unfinished business. Kim Ho looks at her calmly, and before the fight can even begin, he raises his hand and forfeits. The audience bursts into murmurs. Even instructor Sudok seems caught off guard, asking why he's surrendering so suddenly. Kim Ho states that he's simply not in the condition to continue. He has already achieved what he came for, a single victory, and that's enough for him. He even forfeits his third match, securing 2 straight losses and further infuriating Chunhae. She scolds him harshly, calling him spineless and accusing him of disgracing himself with cowardice. She insists that her grandfather, the great Thunderlord, always preached the importance of fighting with conviction. Kim Ho recalls that Thunderlord Song Jeong-yoon was indeed once known as the Thunder Monarch, a living legend whose strength shook the heavens. But her lecture doesn't move him. Her words, though noble, simply don't apply to someone like him. He shrugs, turns his back, and walks off without another word, leaving her fuming. Before exiting, he smugly reminds her about the dessert coupon she promised him earlier. The taunt hits home, and she visibly struggles not to lose her temper then and there. Her fury only finds release in her next match. Moments later, Yang Ji-hong steps into the arena, expecting a fair duel against a Topaz Tower student. What he gets instead is a massacre. Chunhae's lightning magic explodes across the battlefield in a single devastating strike, vaporizing his defenses and ending the match in less than a second. The crowd watches in horrified admiration as his body collapses, covered in burns. Byung-chul, observing from the stands, mutters that Kim Ho made the smartest move possible by forfeiting. Facing someone in that kind of mood would have been suicide. Chunhae glares toward Kim Ho with eyes like twin thunderbolts, and even Byung-chul can feel the static from her murderous aura. Kim Ho, however, looks completely unbothered. If anything, he seems impressed by her strength, quietly acknowledging her as the true heir of the Thunderlord's power. The rest of the spectators aren't nearly as kind. They start whispering that Kim Ho's victory against Yin Hua was just dumb luck, that he's not skilled, just fortunate. And honestly, that's exactly the kind of reputation he wants. The less attention on his real capabilities, the better. The final match of the round features Chunhae once again, this time against Seo Yain, the stoic and beautiful gun duelist known for her unmatched accuracy. The crowd buzzes with excitement. Gunners are notoriously difficult opponents for mages, thanks to their range and precision. Many spectators start betting that Chunhae might actually lose this one. Kim Ho, watching with interest, says that the outcome's still uncertain, it could go either way. He jokingly suggests placing a bet, and of course, Byung-chul immediately agrees, wagering 5 silver coins on Chunhae's defeat. The battle begins with Yain opening fire, her bullets infused with mana and speed enhancement enchantments. Dozens of glowing projectiles fly toward Chunhae, who reacts instantly. With perfect composure, she conjures a barrier of lightning, deflecting the bullets effortlessly. Kim Ho observes with a smirk, already predicting what comes next. He knows her mana reserves are vast. She can handle sustained combat easily. As Yain reloads, Chunhae unleashes her next move. She summons a flock of hummingbird spells, each glowing with electrical energy, and sends them soaring toward her opponent. The air crackles with tension as the lightning birds streak across the field. The duel between the stoic gunner and the Thunderlord's granddaughter is just beginning, and for once, even Kim Ho doesn't know how it's going to end. The gunner reacts quickly, narrowly dodging the twin hummingbirds of lightning that dart toward her. For a moment, it seems like she might turn the tide, but Chunhae isn't done yet. With precise control, she commands the 2 lightning birds to change direction mid-flight. Their glowing forms whip through the air, striking from behind. One of them grazes Yain across the face, sending a jolt through her entire body. The impact isn't a full hit, but it's enough to stun her briefly and knock her off balance. She crashes to the ground, gritting her teeth. If that blow had landed cleanly, the paralysis effect would have ended the fight right then and there. From the stands, Kim Ho remarks that the stun has slowed Yain's movements considerably. He predicts that, with the first strike having connected, the next one will hit its mark without fail. Things are unfolding exactly as he expected. Chunhae is seconds away from securing her win. But Yain isn't the type to go down quietly. In a sudden burst of ingenuity, she hurls a smoke grenade toward Chunhae, filling the arena with thick gray clouds. The smoke blinds the lightning mage's vision, forcing her on the defensive. Kim Ho watches, intrigued. He notes that this tactic wouldn't have worked against most opponents, yet somehow Yain has managed to land the grenade perfectly. With her opponent's sight obscured, Yain finally gains the upper hand. She repositions herself silently and fires a shot through the haze, the bullet infused with mana. The projectile connects, striking Chunhae in the back. Though the crowd gasps, Chunhae manages to cast a protective barrier at the last second. Even so, The attack rattles her. She's shaken and forced to acknowledge that she's in real danger. Yane, meanwhile, presses her advantage. Byung-chul, watching from the crowd, excitedly points out that she must come from a wealthy family. After all, she's now cloaked by an invisibility mantle, one of the rarest gear pieces in the academy. To make matters worse for Chunhae, Yane unveils a high-grade rifle, gleaming with enchantments. The next shot is so powerful that Chunhae doesn't even attempt to block it. She barely dodges, the bullet grazing her shoulder. At this point, both fighters' health bars hover near the halfway mark, and the timer shows that more than half the match has already elapsed. The situation grows dire for Chunhae. Hidden beneath her cloak, Yane becomes a ghost. Chunhae can't pinpoint her position and has no visual cue for incoming shots. Every time Yane fires, the lightning mage is forced to react blindly. But this time, Chunhae adapts. Using the faint traces of mana from each bullet, she tracks their origin through her barrier's residual energy field. The moment she determines Yane's location, she strikes back. Chunhae slams her hand onto the arena floor, releasing a surge of lightning that races through the ground like a living wave. The electricity finds its mark, forcing Yane to leap away to avoid being electrocuted. But now, she's airborne. A fatal mistake against an opponent who controls lightning. In mid-air, Yane can't change direction or dodge effectively. Chunhae capitalizes on the opening and launches another hummingbird spell. The crackling bird zips upward, striking Yane squarely in the chest. A blinding flash engulfs the arena as the spell connects, paralyzing the gunner instantly. However, the victory isn't as decisive as it seems. Just as Yane's body hits the ground, the timer runs out. The match ends on the spot. Yane lies motionless, her health slightly lower than Chunhae's, but not enough to call it a knockout. Byung-chul stares, stunned by the intensity of the fight, while Kim-ho remains calm and unsurprised. He had already concluded that Chunhae couldn't be bested in direct combat. Because her health is marginally higher, she's officially declared the winner. Still, Kim-ho admits to himself that Yane's performance was remarkable. Lasting this long against the Thunderlord's granddaughter was no small feat. Meanwhile, Byung-chul groans as he realizes he's lost their bet. He reluctantly hands over 5 silver coins to Kim-ho, though he immediately suggests placing another wager to win them back. Kim-ho declines, realizing that his companion has an unhealthy addiction to gambling. Back in the arena, the next match is announced: Hyunwoo vs Jo Byuk, the famed disciple of the Fist King. Kim-ho perks up, finding this matchup far too interesting to skip. When Byung-chul proposes another bet, Kim-ho agrees without hesitation. He predicts that the Fist King's disciple will emerge victorious. Byung-chul calls him heartless for betting against his own friend, but Kim-ho simply states that he's being realistic. Down in the arena, Hyunwoo steels himself. He knows Kim-ho is watching, and he's determined to prove his worth. Drawing his iron sword, he takes a stance opposite his opponent. Byuk eyes the weapon curiously, questioning why Hyunwoo doesn't use the sealed blade strapped to his back. Hyunwoo admits that he's not yet qualified to wield it, but Byuk shrugs. It makes no difference to him. He intends to fight at full power regardless. The referee signals the start. Byuk bursts forward like a cannonball, closing the distance instantly. Hyunwoo's first slash is easily dodged, and Byuk counters with a blazing fist that collides with Hyunwoo's guard. The sheer force of the strike sends shockwaves across the stage. Even through his sword, Hyunwoo can feel his arms ache from the impact. The next punch lands harder. The swordsman's body is flung backward, skidding across the ground. He quickly realizes that he's hopelessly outmatched in raw strength. Normal attacks won't get him anywhere. As Byuk launches himself forward again, Hyunwoo gathers every ounce of his mana for one final strike. Activating his clear stream sword technique, he meets Byuk head-on. Steel clashes with fire-infused fists, creating an explosion of sparks. For a fleeting moment, it looks like Hyunwoo might prevail. But then his iron sword shatters, fragments scattering across the arena floor. With his weapon destroyed, Hyunwoo has no choice but to concede. Still, his final attack wasn't in vain. A thin cut now marks Byuk's shoulder. The Fist King's disciple smiles, promising to face him again someday. Just as Kim-ho predicted, the match ends in Byuk's favor. He shakes his head slightly, remembering how Hyunwoo shattered a blade during their first meeting on the train. It seems breaking swords is becoming his unfortunate trademark. Byung-chul sighs in defeat once again, realizing he's lost yet another bet. Kim-ho collects his winnings, but seeing the guy nearly out of money, he offers an alternative: payment in information. Later, the trio sits together in lunch. The announcer has just revealed that after the break, there will be a raid placement exam, so they decide to regroup before the event. As Byung-chul finishes his sandwich at a painfully slow pace, Kim-ho asking him to hurry up and share what he knows. Finally, Byung-chul swallows his last bite and asks what he wants in return. Kim-ho leans forward and requests information about the top performers from all 4 factions. Whatever comes next, he plans to use it to his advantage, and his mind is already spinning with possibilities. Byung-chul doesn't seem to mind sharing his knowledge, claiming that this sort of information isn't exactly top secret anyway. So, he begins explaining the structure of the Academy's 4 major factions, the powerful groups that shape its balance of influence. Aside from the Student Council, which functions as the Academy's official governing body, there exist 4 dominant factions: the Muram Alliance, the Guild Federation, the Magic Tower Society, and the Knights Order. Kim-ho listens, amused, thinking that it sounds like someone crammed 4 entire manhwa universes into a single school. Byung-chul starts with the Muram Alliance, currently led by the grandson of the Sword Saint, a young prodigy named Mo Ying-jun, who commands respect across the Academy's martial community. Next is the Magic Tower Society, headed by none other than Hong Yi-hwa, the fiery Ruby Tower representative who had previously lost to Kim-ho. Despite her earlier defeat, she remains a top-tier mage and one of the most influential figures among the Tower students. Then comes the Guild Federation, ruled by Park Nari, a well-known druid famous for her tiger-striped cat companion. Rumor has it that one of her guild members hides an unfathomable power, but no one knows who it is. Finally, the Knights Order, the faction representing honor and chivalry, is led by Lee Seong-yun, the son of the renowned swordmaster himself. Kim-ho notes wryly that the lineup sounds straight out of a serialized webtoon. Strong bloodlines, secret powers, and rival legacies all thrown into one chaotic academy. Their discussion ends abruptly when Kim notices that Yun Woo is missing. Byung-chul suddenly remembers something about meeting the club president and bolts out of the cafeteria, leaving Kim alone with Yane. The silence between them feels awkward, so Kim decides to start a conversation. He recalls the cookie she had offered him back on the train and says that he wants to repay her kindness. Mentioning the dessert coupon Chunhae had given him earlier, he summons a blueberry cake, inviting Yane to share it with him. She accepts without hesitation, her expression softening for once. As they eat, Yane breaks the silence by asking what he thought about her fight against Chunhae and why she lost. Kim calmly explains that regular mana bullets simply can't penetrate mana barriers, especially against mages with a high mana capacity like Chunhae. Still, he says that with proper mana amplification, Yane's shots could become powerful enough to pierce even strong defenses. To his surprise, Yane seems puzzled by the suggestion. She admits that she's never practiced mana training before. Kim is caught off guard. Any seasoned gunner should at least understand the basics of mana flow. When he asks about how she fires her bullets, she explains her method in a way that makes it clear she's been relying entirely on instinct. The revelation stuns him. A gunner fighting purely on intuition, with no formal training in mana manipulation, shouldn't have lasted even a minute against Chunhae, and yet Yane had nearly taken her down. The realization makes Kim reevaluate her talent. He tells her that once she learns to control mana properly and masters the magic bullet skill, she'll find her combat abilities improving dramatically. Before they can continue, the academy bell rings. It's time for the placement exam. The students gather inside a massive hall, where their homeroom teacher, Lee Sudok, stands in front of a glowing portal. With his usual cold demeanor, he begins explaining the rules of the dungeon conquest exam. The trial, he says, will take place inside a dungeon called Mist Forest, a zone infamous for its unpredictable monster spawns and disorienting fog. He lays out the first rule: high score. Each student's performance will be judged by how many monsters they defeat within 10 minutes. Every successful kill earns points, and the goal is simple: slay as many creatures as possible before time runs out. Then comes the second rule: fixed zone. He explains that once inside, every student's abilities, traits, and gear will be temporarily downgraded to F rank. Even their mana cores will be affected, meaning everyone will be fighting on equal ground. Sudok warns them not to get clever or try anything reckless. Mana mismanagement inside this dungeon could easily kill them. Groans and complaints ripple through the crowd. Most of the students protest that the conditions are unfair, but Sudok only smirks, muttering that the weak always complain first. He does, however, note that a few exceptional students, like Han So-min and Choi Young-pai, might actually be able to perform decently under these restrictions. After his explanation, he begins calling names one by one. The students step through the portal in small groups, vanishing into the mist. When it's Kim-ho and Yane's turn, he gives her a few last-minute tips, advising her to focus on headshots and to switch to her rifle for maximum efficiency if enemies get too close. Chunhae, overhearing him, finds it odd that a supposed non-gunner is giving tactical advice like a seasoned marksman. Once inside, the two split up to cover more ground. Kim Ho takes a deep breath as the forest's damp air surrounds him. It's been a long time since he last entered this dungeon, and he's curious to see how much stronger he's become since transmigrating. The timer starts. Almost immediately, a goblin leaps from behind a tree, shrieking as it tries to ambush him. Kim barely glances at it before slicing through the creature's neck in one smooth motion. The system notifies him of his first kill, and he smirks. The Mist Forest is notorious for its chaos. Monsters spawn randomly, appearing anywhere at any time, overwhelming those who can't adapt quickly. But Kim knows that even chaos has patterns. He recalls the dungeon's fixed spawn cycles, something known among top players as the C pattern. Analyzing the goblin's placement, he realizes that the next spawn will likely be to his right. Without hesitation, he hurls his short blade toward that direction, striking an ogre clean through the eye socket. The giant collapses instantly. As he pulls his blade free, Kim wonders whether he even needs a staff anymore. Grinning, he collects the ogre's crude weapon, treating it like free loot. From that moment on, he moves through the forest like a storm, slashing, dodging, and killing with effortless rhythm. His points skyrocket. The system beeps repeatedly as he racks up kills faster than anyone else. Two trolls attempt to ambush him, charging from opposite sides, but Kim doesn't flinch. With calm precision, he sidesteps one and buries his weapon into the other's chest, his expression as steady as ever. In the Mist Forest, chaos reigns, but for Kim Ho, it's nothing more than a familiar playground. One where he already knows every rule, every pattern, and every flaw waiting to be exploited. Just before leaving the dungeon, Kim remembers something crucial, the replay function. He immediately deletes his footage, fully aware that if the system syncs the monster's movement data with his exact attack patterns, it could expose his real skill level. That kind of attention would bring unnecessary trouble later on, and he's not planning on dealing with that. Barely 3 minutes after entering, Kim steps back out of the dungeon looking exhausted, muttering to himself about how tough the fight was. His early return draws suspicious glances. His homeroom teacher, Lee Sudok, narrows his eyes, recognizing him as the same student who once forfeited a PvP match. Seeing him come out so early again, Sudok silently mocks him, thinking that someone with such a weak mentality could never become a real dragon slayer. But that smug judgment shatters the instant he checks the leaderboard. Kim's name has already jumped into the mid-high bracket, far above what anyone should achieve in such a short time. It's the kind of result that shouldn't even be possible. For a brief moment, Sudok just stares at the screen, stunned. Then, deciding that this kid is worth keeping an eye on, he calls for the next group, Hyunwoo and the others. As the next batch of students enter the dungeon, Kim checks the scoreboard again. Even the academy's top names like Lee Seong-yun and Mo Ying-jun are sitting close to Han So-min's level. Then suddenly, Hyunwoo's name shoots to the top. First place. Highest score. The guy's finally proven he's not just lucky, he's the real deal. When Hyunwoo steps out, Kim claps him on the shoulder and praises his performance, but Hyunwoo shakes his head and says that the only reason he did so well was because Kim helped him reset during their earlier PvP match. Still, their victory doesn't sit well with everyone. A few nearby students start throwing passive-aggressive remarks about Kim, calling him a freeloader who hides behind others. Hyunwoo's about to lose his cool, but Kim just winks, signaling him to let it go. When Kim asks if the test is finally over, Hyunwoo says that Chunhae's score hasn't been displayed yet. Inside the dungeon, Chunhae is having a rough time. A swarm of goblins closes in around her, forcing her on the defensive. She's barely managing to fend them off when she suddenly remembers something Kim had once said to Yang. Aim for the head. Channeling her mana into her bow, she fires a concentrated arrow straight through a goblin's skull. It works, but not fast enough. By the end of her 10-minute run, her score is disappointingly low. When her results appear on the public board, Chunhae's face turns crimson with embarrassment. She mutters under her breath about how unfair it is that the academy insists on displaying everyone's scores out in the open like this. Finally, Sudok announces that the exam is over. The results will be officially released tomorrow. He dismisses the class, ordering everyone to rest until then. As soon as the students leave, Sudok heads straight to the surveillance room, demanding to see Kim's replay data. The technician immediately pulls up the list, but Kim's footage isn't there. At first, he thinks it's a system glitch. Then, after digging deeper, he realizes the replay was deliberately deleted. That revelation doesn't sit well with Sudok. He knows what that means. Kim intentionally wiped his record, which only raises more suspicion. Based on the brief logs they still have, Sudok estimates that Kim was on track to break 2,000 points if he had stayed the full duration. That kind of result isn't just rare, it's unprecedented. A dark thought crosses his mind. What if the boy isn't just talented? What if he's one of the apostles of the evil lord, infiltrating the academy under false pretenses? He keeps that suspicion to himself but decides to prepare quietly. His assistant, nicknamed Four Eyes, asks if they should report the matter to the principal, but Sudok shakes his head. He says that without solid proof, accusing Kim would only push him underground. Instead, he'll keep observing. If Kim is really an imposter, he'll reveal his true colors soon enough. Meanwhile, Kim, Hungwoo, and Yane head to the campus cafe. Over coffee, Kim explains how the academy's internal currency system works. He says that points earned from dungeon runs can be exchanged for items, services, and even replay data, footage of other students' dungeon performances. To demonstrate, he purchases the replay of Han So-min for 100 points and plays it on his device. Hungwoo's jaw drops at how easy it is to access such private recordings. Kim chuckles and tells him that since his score was so high, his replay probably sold for a fortune. Sure enough, a notification pops up. Hungwoo just earned 300 points from people buying his dungeon run. At first, Hungwoo is excited, but his mood quickly changes when Kim points out the downside. Other students can now analyze his techniques, memorize his habits, and learn his weaknesses. Kim warns him that while he might have looked strong during the dungeon run, his weak mana core will become obvious to anyone who studies the footage. Still, he admits the profit makes the risk worth it. Then, Kim reveals something else, a special training room where the mana density is abnormally high, allowing faster core growth. Hungwoo leaps to his feet in excitement, only for Kim to explain the catch. 6 hours in that room costs 500 points. Hungwoo groans that he'd go broke faster than a street beggar if he trained there daily. Kim then smirks and says there's a workaround, a season pass, exclusive to the academy's top clubs. The pass grants unlimited access, but the only way to get one is by taking a club's position, like Moyong-jun's seat in the swordsmanship club. Realizing that's practically impossible, Hungwoo immediately gives up. That's when Kim leans in with a sly grin and offers a deal. If Hungwoo helps him out later, he'll find a way to get the pass himself. All he asks in return is that Hungwoo dive into the deep dungeon once he's strong enough, a place far more dangerous than the Mist Forest. Without hesitation, Hungwoo accepts, declaring that he's got the spirit of a true warrior. Kim laughs, telling him to keep grinding because he'll have the pass ready in 2 weeks. Later that day, Kim makes his way to the workshop district, seeking another opportunity. Inside a dimly lit room, a scruffy engineer looks up and demands to know his business. Kim greets him politely and says he wants to join the Magic Engineering Club. The senior asks why he came to Workshop 4 instead of Workshop 1, and Kim casually lies that the people at Workshop 1 sent him. The engineer immediately looks annoyed, muttering insults under his breath. When the man asks what Kim really wants, Kim simply observes him for a moment, noting the faint shimmer of AB rank magical engineering skill. Without hesitation, he uses copy, duplicating the ability for himself. The man doesn't even notice. As Kim scans the cluttered room, his eyes land on a glowing blue cube sitting on a shelf. He points to it and asks if it's worth anything. The senior scoffs, saying it's just useless scrap, an unsolvable construct too complex for anyone to replicate. Kim feigns interest and offers a trade, saying he feels bad taking it for free. He exchanges it for a catalyst reagent, a basic material engineers always need. Pleased with the deal, the senior happily agrees and tells Kim to keep quiet about their exchange. Kim walks out grinning, knowing he just traded a cheap reagent for something potentially priceless, a cube worth at least 1,000 points. Suddenly, a new optional quest appears before him. Without hesitation, Kim accepts it, despite the warning about its difficulty. The reward, an S-rank item known as the Cube of Life. Having raised over 1,000 S-ranked characters in his past life, Kim knows exactly what to do. He heads to the Monad training room, where he exploits a hidden method to craft the item without suffering through the full questline. Activating his amplification skill, he upgrades his copied B-rank engineering skill to S-rank and begins solving the cube, a 10x10 puzzle that normally takes 3 days to complete. With perfect focus, he manipulates it at lightning speed, nearly finishing the impossible challenge in just 60 seconds. Then, settling into meditation, he channels mana to grow his core further. For an entire hour, he alternates between deep concentration and rapid bursts of work, repeating the process over and over. Kim Ho knows the system inside out, and he's about to break it again, one perfect exploit at a time. Kim Ho knows he has a deadline. The Cube of Life must be completed before Friday if he wants to be ready for the upcoming special event. He's not the kind of guy to miss a critical window, so every move counts. The next morning, He arrives early to class, only to find Yane already there for once. It's unusual. She's normally the latecomer, while Hanwoo, oddly enough, is nowhere to be seen. Before Kim can dwell on it, Yane surprises him with a small ambush, hurling a handful of dinosaur-shaped cookies his way. Kim takes a bite, eyes lighting up like a kid at Christmas. The crunchy sweetness wins him over instantly, and he compliments her baking, though he accidentally calls her bear cookies dinosaurs, earning himself a silent pout of betrayal. Moments later, Hanwoo bursts through the door with his usual grin, and Kim immediately asks how his session went in the special training room. Hanwoo beams, saying that the place is incredible and he can already feel his breakthrough coming. Hearing that, Kim promises to get him the season pass as soon as possible, all while Yane sulks quietly over her cookie misidentification tragedy. Their homeroom teacher, Lee Sudok, walks in right after, instantly commanding the room's attention. He announces that starting today, all battles will be held in the main arena, with the time limit extended to 10 full minutes per match. He stresses that every second will count. Each first year, he explains, must complete 3 matches by the end of the week, and anyone who refuses will face a massive penalty to their final score. As everyone groans, Kim hides a sly grin. This is the very event he's been waiting for, his moment to rise through the ranks. Checking his system panel, he spots a subquest linked to the PvP battles. Win 3 matches, additional rewards scale with consecutive victories. Losing isn't an option this time. He's all in. He tells Hanwoo to join him in the arena, but before they can leave, Yane catches his arm and mentions that she's free today. The entire class turns toward them with wide eyes, expecting a confession, only for the anticipation to die instantly when it turns out she's just talking about a training session they planned earlier. Later that afternoon, the arena is completely empty. Kim and Hanwoo are horsing around, testing spells and joking, when a red-haired upperclassman named Ji-hong strolls in. He immediately starts mocking Kim for forfeiting his duel against Song Chun-hye, calling him a coward who hides behind others. Hanwoo's temper flares, but Kim waves him down, remaining perfectly calm. Instead of snapping back, Kim counters with a smirk, reminding Ji-hong that they both scored equally during the placement exams. The remark hits harder than a punch. Ji-hong's face turns red with fury. He yells that being compared to a coward is an insult to his pride and demands a duel right there and then. Kim agrees without hesitation, a spark of amusement in his eyes. Everything's going exactly as he planned. The match starts. Ji-hong lunges forward with reckless confidence, aiming to finish things in one blow. But Kim is already a step ahead. With a flick of his wrist, he casts the hummingbird spell, the same lightning technique he once copied from Chun-hye. The electrified bird darts forward and strikes Ji-hong squarely, paralyzing him instantly. The redhead collapses, twitching. Kim laughs lightly and remarks that Ji-hong just fell for the exact same trick that once humiliated him against the Thunder Girl. He adds that, at least this time, he showed more mercy than Chun-hye did. With that, he ends the fight in clean fashion. Even after his defeat, Ji-hong refuses to accept the outcome, insisting that a rematch would end differently. Kim humors him, agreeing to another round. Seconds later, Ji-hong is face down on the floor again, this time in an even worse state. Still too stubborn to quit, Ji-hong challenges him to a third match, desperate to redeem himself. Kim pretends to be exhausted and says he'll only agree if he gets something in return. Desperate, Ji-hong offers him a spiritual pill crafted by his family, just to secure another shot. Kim accepts, and then proceeds to beat him a third time with almost no effort. That final defeat finally breaks Ji-hong's pride. He admits his loss, apologizing for the insults he threw earlier and admitting that he was wrong to judge Kim. Kim simply smiles and tells him to keep pretending that he's still a coward, for now. Ji-hong agrees, too confused to question the strange request. With his 3 victories secured, Kim completes his subquest and checks his stats with satisfaction. Hanwoo joins him a little later, having won 2 of his own matches. He says he still has 1 left and insists Kim go on ahead. Kim leaves for the Mana training room, where Yane is waiting. True to his word, he starts teaching her how to properly channel energy into magic bullets. Her focus and adaptability surprise him. She learns at a pace faster than most top-tier students. After a few hours of practice, it's finally her turn to fight. Her opponent is a green-haired boy named Kwok Ji-keo, who tries to use the terrain to ambush her. Yane doesn't even flinch. Calmly, she adjusts her aim and drops him with a clean headshot, earning an effortless victory. That night, Lee Sudok reviews the match replays, his eyes narrowing as he spots something strange. Yane's growth is abnormally fast, far beyond what should be possible in 2 days. Then it clicks. He remembers overhearing that she had been training with Kim Ho. The realization sends a chill down his spine. Once again, that student's name is behind something completely unnatural. Meanwhile, Kim is in his workshop, entirely focused on finishing his project. After hours of meditation and fine-tuning, he finally completes the Cube of Life, a small artifact that enhances all life-type items by 1.3 times. The process has pushed his mana core to rank D, greatly improving his efficiency. He leans back, proud of his achievement, ready to show it off to the world. On his way to class the next morning, he runs into Park Nari, the druid who leads the guild federation. Just as he anticipated, her tiger-striped cat, sensitive to life energy, immediately leaps toward the cube, curling around it affectionately. Nari apologizes for her cat's behavior, clearly intrigued by the object's strong aura. She studies the cube closely, sensing its deep vitality, and asks if he's from class 3. Kim nods casually and tells her it's fine, though he jokes about her cat being clingier than an ex. She laughs softly before finally retrieving the animal and thanking him again. As she walks away, Kim smiles. His plan worked perfectly. He's successfully drawn the Nature Club's attention. If things go as intended, he'll have that coveted season pass soon enough. Later in class, whilst drones on with another dull lecture, Kim counts down the seconds on his internal timer. The moment class ends, he can feel it, the trigger for the special event he's been waiting for. As the students pack up and chatter fills the room, a deep red glow suddenly fills the air. A pulsating orb materializes out of nowhere, humming with unstable energy. Lightning bursts outward, striking every student around him. Screams echo through the room, but before panic can spread, the light fades as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a stunned silence. Kim Ho opens his eyes slowly, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. The event has officially begun. At first, everyone thinks nothing has happened, just another weird day in Dragonslayer Academy. But then they start noticing faint glowing numbers etched across their foreheads. That's when Kim immediately realizes what's going on. This is no ordinary occurrence, it's the Ban Wave, the Academy's surprise inspection system. Using high-level Magitech scanning, it detects illegal artifacts, banned weapons, and unregistered toys, automatically sealing them away. The air fills with a harsh metallic screech that sounds like nails on a steel wall, making Kim wince. Meanwhile, Yane and Hunwoo stand unfazed, as if having glowing numbers on their faces is the most normal thing in the world. Across the room, a panicked student frantically opens his system window, muttering that something's wrong. Kim strolls over and casually asks if his club president forgot to mention that today was inspection day. The guy, pale with dread, blurts out that he doesn't technically have anything illegal, just things that no sane man should ever get caught carrying. With a hint of amusement, Kim tells him he might be able to help. The guy doubts it at first, but desperation wins out fast. When Kim reaches out his hand, the student nearly collapses to his knees, begging for salvation and promising he'll do anything in return. Kim accepts the offer with a calm smile and tells him that, from this moment on, he owes him a favor. The terrified student agrees without hesitation. Kim instructs him to stash his banned items inside the Cube of Life, which he assures is completely undetectable. The guy squints suspiciously, unsure if he's being tricked, but the sound of approaching footsteps makes his decision for him. Both of them duck under a table like two badly disguised criminals, and Kim mutters that it's now or never. Panicking, the guy hurriedly dumps every illegal item he has into the cube. Moments later, Song Chunhye storms into the classroom with the force of a thunderstorm. She bellows for all filthy lawbreakers to freeze where they stand, lightning practically crackling from her hair. Her sharp eyes immediately lock onto the suspicious pair hiding under the desk. She demands to know what they're hiding. Kim stands up smoothly and replies that they're just having a private conversation between men, nothing illegal about that. The other student nods furiously, swearing they weren't up to anything. Chunhye doesn't buy it for a second and orders him to empty his pockets. Then she turns to Kim, demanding he reveal whatever he's concealing because, as she puts it, the orb doesn't lie. But when she scans him, the inspection orb doesn't react at all. It's as if he's completely clean. She stands there dumbfounded, unable to comprehend it. Kim simply bows politely, thanks her for her concern, and walks out of the room grinning. The Cube of Life worked perfectly, and just in time for Friday's big event. Out in the hallway, the same guy from before follows him, practically singing praises of gratitude. He says that if Kim hadn't intervened, he'd probably be rotting in a disciplinary cell by now. Kim smirks and reminds him that he didn't do it out of charity, a favor still needs repayment. He tells the guy to take the cube and return it to his club president, who, coincidentally, has been wanting to meet him. It turns out this trembling student belongs to the Thieves Guild, the organization secretly responsible for smuggling illegal goods throughout Dragonslayer Academy. When they reach the guild's headquarters, the student timidly greets his boss, only to get kicked square in the face by a furious woman. She shouts that he's made her work on her day off, then proceeds to beat the poor fool for wasting her time. Kim clears his throat to announce his presence, and instantly her demeanor changes. The woman straightens her jacket, brushes her hair aside, and introduces herself as Yu Young, president of the Thieves Club. Business mode activates immediately. She demands that Kim show her the item that supposedly bypasses the ban wave system. When Kim reveals the Cube of Life, Yu Young's eyes widen. She admits that she's heard rumors about such an artifact but never believed it actually existed. For a moment, she looks like she might snatch it then and there, muttering that it's driving her crazy with temptation. Kim chuckles and warns her that stealing it would be a bad idea since all Magitech items come with anti-theft protocols. Hearing that, her excitement fades into cautious curiosity. She leans back in her chair and asks what exactly he wants in return, mentioning that the Thieves Club isn't exactly swimming in funds these days. Kim assures her that his request won't require money, just cooperation. He asks her to personally escort him into the temporary underground storage room for a private discussion. The moment those words leave his mouth, Yu Young's mood darkens. She glares at him and asks if he's out of his mind. That storage room, she explains, is where all confiscated contraband ends up after the ban wave sweeps. It's heavily guarded by the Disciplinary Committee day and night. She says the items stay there for a week before mysteriously disappearing, nobody knows where. Kim calmly tells her that he already knows she'll be heading there herself in a couple of days. That makes her narrow her eyes even further. She accuses him of being an undercover lackey for the Disciplinary Committee. Kim shrugs and replies that he's got nothing to do with those self-righteous clowns. In fact, they're the last people he'd ever work with. She sighs and admits that while she's grateful for his help earlier, what he's asking isn't something easy to pull off. That's when Kim drops his real offer. He tells her that he already knows how impossible it is to break into the storage facility, but that's not his problem. What he needs is a way out. If she can guarantee his safe escape afterward, he'll give her the Cube of Life in exchange. The room goes silent. Yu Young studies him carefully, realizing just how valuable this deal could be. With the cube, her guild could store and smuggle even their most dangerous contraband without ever triggering the ban wave again. As she weighs her options, Kim meets her gaze and gives her one final chance to agree, before he takes the deal elsewhere. Later that night, the Thieves Guild gathers at a vantage point overlooking the operation site. Every member is present and ready. Club leader Danji Yu Young's second in command, performs a quick head count. Everyone's accounted for, except for one new face. The senior members whisper among themselves, confused about the unfamiliar rookie in their midst. Without offering an explanation, Yu Young simply says the boy's here to help and leaves it at that. Skepticism spreads through the ranks. This mission is already dangerous enough without a wild card. Outside the perimeter, their tech specialist Davin confirms that preparations are complete. The signal's clear, the watch rotation is mapped, and all surveillance systems are jammed. The only thing left now is execution. And among them, standing quietly in the shadows with that trademark calm grin, is Kim Ho, ready to make his move. Before the operation began, Yu Young gave Kim Ho one last piece of advice: blend in and don't stand out. The mission was about precision, not chaos. Once inside, their main objective was to secure rare, compact items that could be easily smuggled out. With that reminder, the Thieves Club activated their stealth technique. Shadows wrapped around their legs like living smoke as they charged forward in complete silence. The technique, known as silent steps, was a refined B-rank movement skill that suppressed both sound and presence. Kim Ho, now confident after crafting the Cube of Life, no longer needed his magic engineering slot. Watching the thieves in action once was enough. He copied the movement skill instantly and replaced his old one. Meanwhile, the lone guard stationed at the main entrance had no idea what was about to hit him. Without warning, a cloud of ethereal shadow butterflies materialized around him, fluttering with eerie grace. By the time he realized something was off, the butterflies detonated, weaving into dark tendrils that gagged and bound him to the wall. It was an elegant takedown, a clean, bloodless subduel designed for efficiency. Inside, the third floor of the old building housed the Academy's most restricted goods, confiscated artifacts, weapons, and dangerous items sealed away after past ban waves. Naturally, the area was heavily reinforced with detection wards and layered security barriers. Navigating the maze of magical traps required teamwork. The thieves deftly disarmed several glyphs before being spotted by a patrolling guard. The man barely had time to raise his staff before the twin thieves leapt in, binding him with shadow ropes in seconds. A few more guards fell in similar fashion, efficiently restrained and silenced. Yu Young had made it clear, no unnecessary bloodshed. Finally, the crew reached the final corridor that led straight to the temporary storage chamber. Before breaching the room, Yu Young produced a shimmering magic glass lens to scout the area ahead. Through the reflection, she spotted Trouble, a goblin-faced third-year student standing guard. He was armed with the infamous Hell Cleaver, an A-rank battle axe known for tearing through magic defenses like paper. For a thief like Yu Young, this was a nightmare opponent. The sheer destructive power of that weapon made close combat suicide. Kim Ho stepped forward, calmly asking if she had the technique Shadow Dream in her arsenal. Her eyes widened slightly. Few people outside her circle even knew that spell existed, but she confirmed she did. Without another word, Kim placed his hand on her shoulder and activated Amplify, boosting her C-rank Shadow Dream to A rank. There was no time for questions, they had a job to finish. Yu Young immediately cast the spell, and the air shimmered with waves of dark purple butterflies. The number she summoned was far beyond anything she'd ever managed before. The guard barked in confusion as the swarm surrounded him. He swung Hell Cleaver in wide arcs, cutting through the air like a madman. But no matter how many he hit, more appeared. The moment one of the butterflies detonated, the entire swarm chain reacted in a violent explosion of shadow energy. When the smoke cleared, the guard was wrapped in a cocoon of shadow silk, alive but completely immobilized. Kim couldn't help but smirk. A-rank magic was no joke. Yu Young, meanwhile, silently vowed to corner this mysterious freshman later and demand some answers. With the last defense down, the thieves moved in to claim their prize. The vault was filled with confiscated treasures, shimmering relics, locked tomes, and cursed trinkets sealed in containment jars. While the others focused on high-value items, Kim began personal shopping. He was after banned items that had elemental penalties, cursed artifacts that harmed their wielder's body or mana system. Most mages avoided them like plague, but for Kim, who possessed S-rank elemental resistance, they were practically free upgrades. He quickly pocketed a shockstone that caused paralysis on contact and scanned the shelves for more. As he searched, he stumbled upon something far more interesting, a burning grimoire radiating intense heat. The runes across its cover pulsed like molten metal. Inside were descriptions of a combat technique called Blazing Fist, a fire-based close-range skill. For someone like Kim, who lacked strong offensive options, it was a jackpot. While the team packed up their loot, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. The door slammed open, and two figures entered, Song Chun-ki, president of the student council, and Gwak Sung-jae, a second year from the disciplinary committee. Yu Young cursed under her breath. Of all the nights for the student authorities to show up, they chose this one. Chun-ki's commanding voice filled the room as he ordered the thieves to surrender peacefully and follow him to the disciplinary office. He made it clear, resistance would only make things worse. Yu Young didn't even let him finish. She snapped her fingers and shouted for everyone to split and scatter. Pulling a small vial from her belt, she smashed it into the ground, creating a cloud of darkness that expanded into a shadow haven. Within seconds, the thieves vanished into the veil, invisible and muffled to outside detection. The concealment would only last a few minutes, but that was more than enough time to disappear. Unfortunately, Gwak Sung-jae wasn't the type to panic. He calmly pulled out a divination crystal, channeling energy through it to track mana signatures. Within moments, glowing threads of light appeared, pointing toward the escaping thieves. He relayed their positions to the security team, and suddenly, the escape route became a death trap. Alarms blared as the building's magical wards reactivated. Kim dashed through the corridors, dodging traps and suppressing his mana trail, when a massive boulder shot out from the corner straight toward him. Reflexes kicked in. Kim rolled aside, narrowly avoiding being flattened. As the boulder shattered against the wall, Gwak Sung-jae stepped out from the shadows, slow clapping. He remarked that Kim's reflexes weren't bad, impressive, even, for someone who didn't appear on any official registry. Sung-jae studied him with a sharp gaze. He knew every member of the thieves, club by face, but this black-haired freshman was a complete unknown. That alone made him dangerous. Kim said nothing. He knew better than to speak. His voice could expose his identity. Sung-jae took his silence as defiance. The ground beneath them rumbled as jagged stone spikes erupted upward, aiming to pin him down. Kim weaved between them with smooth, fluid steps, summoning a hummingbird of lightning in one swift motion. The crackling bird shot forward, its wings slicing through the air. Sung Jae clicked his tongue, unimpressed, and summoned massive stone cannons entwined with tree roots, preparing to fire. The dungeon raid had just escalated from a stealth mission to a full-scale duel, and Kim Ho, as usual, was right where he wanted to be. GWAK Sung Jae unleashed a furious barrage of stone cannonballs, determined to crush the intruder who dared to defy him. The thunderous volley tore through the air, but the electric hummingbird danced between the projectiles with impossible grace. Sung Jae could barely believe what he was seeing. Never in his life had he witnessed someone control the spell with such fluid precision. If he hadn't activated a defensive barrier beforehand, he would already be nothing but ash. While he stood momentarily stunned, Kim Ho slipped past him using silent steps, his movement soundless as a ghost's whisper. But the exit route offered little mercy. The only path forward led straight through a corridor rigged with more rock cannons, primed to fire at any movement. Sung Jae triggered them all at once, the ground rumbling beneath the explosion. He wasn't just trying to stop the thief. He was trying to make an example of him. For a moment, he thought it was over. No one had ever survived one of his carefully crafted kill zones. But then the temperature began to rise. The air thickened, shimmering with heat, until Sung Jae felt like he was standing at the mouth of a furnace. Through the haze, he saw the thief emerge, fist burning with hellish fire, the heat bending the very air around him. His instincts screamed one thing: forbidden skill. Panicking, Sung Jae dumped every drop of mana he had into summoning a triple-layer bloodstone wall, a defense spell durable enough to tank a siege weapon. But against Inferno Fist, it may as well have been made of glass. Kim Ho's blazing strike shattered through all 3 layers like nothing, the impact echoing through the corridor and sending Sung Jae flying backward into the wall. The attack landed perfectly, but even Kim could tell it was a dangerous move. Controlling such volatile magic drained his focus and mana, and one wrong push could have incinerated his target completely. Fortunately, he'd pulled his punch just in time. Sung Jae was badly beaten, but alive. Still, this was going to stir trouble. The Emerald Magic Tower and the Disciplinary Committee would go berserk once they caught wind of a forbidden skill being used on campus. They'd dig into every corner of the academy to uncover who the mysterious caster was. But Kim wasn't worried. He'd erased all traces of himself long before they could find any leads. Footsteps echoed in the distance. More guards rushing toward the source of the explosion. That was his cue. Without a sound, Kim Ho melted into the shadows and slipped away, leaving only the faint smell of smoke behind. The next day, chaos brewed in the Room of Truth, the Disciplinary Committee's infamous interrogation chamber. Dan Ji-Yu Young, leader of the Thieves' Club, sat in the hot seat wearing an expression of perfect innocence. She played her role flawlessly, sighing and pouting like a victim wrongfully accused. The interrogation dragged on so long that even Student Council President Song Chun-ki eventually stormed out, exhausted. When Chief Oh Se-hoon of the Disciplinary Committee took over, he switched tactics. He handed her a thick ledger of confiscated items from the temporary storage room and asked her to review it. Ji-Yu Young flipped through the pages, feigning confusion while secretly feeling a wave of satisfaction. Each page she turned confirmed that small, valuable trinkets had mysteriously vanished from the inventory, all now safely in her possession thanks to Kim Ho. The committee knew she was guilty, but they lacked proof. No method, no witness, no evidence. As long as nothing concrete surfaced, she couldn't be punished beyond a mild warning. With a practiced sigh, she denied everything once more, and the chief, out of options, could only give her a symbolic disciplinary mark. Leaving the interrogation room with a triumphant smirk, Ji-Yu Young crossed paths with the rest of the committee. Counting heads, she noticed one person missing: GWAK Sung Jae, still recovering in the infirmary. The sight of her smug expression infuriated Song Chun-hai, who snapped that one of the thieves had used Inferno Fist, a banned ability, to put Sung Jae in the hospital. Ji-Yu Young feigned ignorance, though the name immediately rang a bell. She didn't know the full story, but if she had to guess, there was only one person from last night's operation reckless and skilled enough to wield a forbidden skill: Kim Ho. After enduring yet another round of questioning, Ji-Yu Young returned straight to the Thieves' Club headquarters. There, she found Kim sitting casually at a workbench, inspecting his newly looted items. She glanced at his hand, half expecting burn scars, but it was flawless, completely unmarked. When she questioned him, he admitted with a shrug that he was the one who sent Sung Jae flying. Ignoring the confession, she turned her attention to the cube of life, which now shimmered with countless stolen treasures within. The colors swirling inside looked like liquid jewels, and her eyes practically sparkled with greed. It was a masterpiece, their best haul yet. With the mission complete, Ji-Yu Young declared their deal officially fulfilled. As Kim stood to leave, she stopped him, offering him a genuine invitation to join the Thieves' Club permanently. She said she'd take care of him personally, praising his cunning, control, and ruthlessness. All traits she considered essential for a master thief. Coming from her, it was high praise, even if it sounded like an insult wrapped in admiration. But Kim declined the offer without hesitation. He knew better. Yu Young's interest wasn't in him, it was in the cube of life. Leaving the self-proclaimed queen of thieves staring at the cube, already plotting her next move. Kim Ho already had plans for the cube of life. Selling it was part of his long-term strategy. What he really needed were 4 season passes to the special mana training rooms, and the cube was his golden ticket to get them. The immunity to the bandwave was nice, sure, but that wasn't its true value. The cube's real strength lay in its core ability, something far more enticing. He promised Dan Ji Yu Young that he'd share the item's full description in exchange for a small favor. All he wanted was for her to pass a message to the head of the Magitech Club, spreading word that a freshman had successfully completed a 10 by 10 by 10 life cube, an achievement unheard of among underclassmen. Ji Yu Young agreed, though she nearly dropped the cube when she saw what it truly did. The item enhanced the effectiveness of stored life-type objects by 1.3 times, an absurd multiplier that would sell for a fortune among certain factions. After regaining her composure, she looked at Kim with a mix of respect and disbelief. Before he left, she urged him again to reconsider joining the Thieves' Club, saying that even without the cube, his skills and composure were worth more than gold. Kim smiled faintly and told her he'd think about it, though in truth, he already had his answer. The weekend passed quietly, and a few uneventful days took the heat off the disciplinary committee. By Monday morning, the academy felt calm again, almost too calm. Kim Ho walked to class beside the ever-drowsy Seo Yi-in, who shuffled forward like a half-awake zombie. It was barely 8 a.m., and she already looked ready to collapse. As they made their way through the main courtyard, Kim's instincts began to tingle. He could feel the prickling presence of being watched. The steps behind them were light but not invisible, amateurs. He suspected the Snoops were scouts from either the Emerald Magic Tower or the Nature Club, both groups notorious for sticking their noses where they didn't belong. Not one for patience, Kim decided to deal with it right away. He told Yi-in to head to class ahead of him, assuring her he'd catch up soon. She gave a small nod, her tired eyes flicking briefly to where the 2 poorly hidden tails were crouching. Once Yi-in disappeared around the corner, Kim turned and faced his stalkers directly. The pair froze. The boy, clearly the arrogant type, smirked with misplaced confidence as if he'd been waiting for this confrontation. The blue-haired girl beside him, however, looked uneasy, polite, but cautious. The boy puffed out his chest and introduced himself as a mage from the Emerald Magic Tower, boasting about his affiliation like it meant something. The girl, maintaining some decorum, formally invited Kim to meet their leader for a discussion. Naturally, Kim rejected it outright. He said that if their leader wanted a meeting, he could walk over in person instead of sending underlings. That ticked the boy off immediately. His smirk twisted into a sneer as he slipped on a magic conductive glove, clearly eager to teach Kim a lesson. Kim found the idea amusing. He didn't even let the fool finish his pompous monologue before summoning a hummingbird of lightning. The crackling bird shot forward, striking the boy square in the chest. In an instant, his body locked up, and he fell convulsing to the ground like a fish out of water. The girl gasped, clearly out of her depth, as her companion twitched uncontrollably. Kim didn't move an inch. His calm, indifferent stare told her everything. If she wanted a fight, he'd oblige. Panicked, the girl raised her hands and apologized profusely. She admitted they were only following orders and hadn't meant to provoke him. Judging by the hummingbird's precision and control, she could tell this wasn't someone to mess with. Kim accepted the apology with a curt nod and turned away. At least one of them had the sense to know when to quit. As Kim walked off, the girl watched in silence, realizing that the academy's rumors about him being a coward were complete nonsense. The boy, still lying on the ground, wasn't as wise. When he finally regained control of his body, rage burned in his eyes. Convinced that Kim had only gotten lucky, he swore revenge. But before he could even stand, a magic bullet zipped through the air and struck the back of his skull, knocking him unconscious instantly. The blue-haired girl froze, eyes darting around in terror, trying to locate the unseen sniper. Then, before she could react, a second bullet hit her clean between the eyes, knocking her out cold as well. The 2 elite representatives of the Emerald Magic Tower were neutralized in seconds. By the time Kim returned to class, the lecture had already started. The instructor was droning on about dungeon mechanics, explaining that every dungeon was designed to wear adventurers down. Running out of resources or mana inside one was a guaranteed death sentence. A few minutes later, Seo Yi-in slipped into her seat next to him, as calm as ever. Kim noticed she arrived slightly later than him, which told him exactly what she'd been doing outside. He didn't comment. She looked way too relaxed for someone who just executed 2 spies. The instructor clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. He announced that the next raid exam would take the form of a time attack challenge. Unlike the previous dungeons, this one could be practiced multiple times, but during the real run, each student would only get 1 attempt. The objective was simple: locate the target, defeat it, and destroy the totem within 5 minutes to secure a passing grade. The instructor emphasized the importance of practicing efficient routes beforehand, warning that hesitation or poor mana management could easily lead to failure. As soon as he mentioned that the raid would be conducted in pairs, a familiar sound echoed through the classroom, Shin Byung-chul eagerly latching himself onto the previous exam's top performer, Go Yun-woo. The whole class groaned, and Kim couldn't help but smile faintly. Another test, another opportunity. This one would be no different. Kim Ho gave Byung-chul the go-ahead to pair up with another one of their friends, figuring it would be good for him to gain some experience. As for himself, his partner's situation was decided before he even had the chance to react. Seo Yi-in latched onto his sleeve, her sleepy expression replaced by an unusual spark of determination as she declared that they would be teaming up for the raid. While Kim Ho's new partnership took shape, trouble was brewing elsewhere, deep within the Emerald Magic Tower. In the heart of their moss-covered meeting hall, a bald man known as a mage capable of manipulating trees and roots, was losing his temper. He hurled his fury at his subordinates, his vines twisting violently around the room. His younger brother, a disciplinary officer, had been humiliated and hospitalized by a lowly freshman thief, and now the tower's reputation was in tatters. After a moment, he forced himself to calm down, releasing the trembling the lackey from his grip before things went too far. Settling back into his wooden throne, the man stewed in silence, plagued by a nagging sense of dread. The Emerald Tower's president, Mok Young-hwa, had already decided to meet the notorious freshman, Kim Ho, face to face, a move influenced heavily by the Nature Club's president, Ha Seo-yeon, who had reportedly taken an interest in him. The tower's image was falling apart, and Young-hwa saw an opportunity to turn things around. If they could get their hands on Kim's mysterious cube of life, they might salvage some dignity. The president announced that the cube would serve as compensation for the insult dealt to the Emerald Tower. Upon hearing this, the same foolish lackey who had already failed once, begged for another chance. He insisted that his defeat had only been the result of carelessness and that he could redeem himself if given the opportunity. Young-hwa, after some deliberation, agreed to let him try again but made the consequences crystal clear. Failure would mean expulsion. Despite the risk, he accepted eagerly, his pride blinding him to the danger ahead. To bolster his odds, Young-hwa lent him a combat golem, instructing him to crush the enigmatic freshman without hesitation. Meanwhile, Kim Ho and Seo Yi-in were knee-deep in the Goblin Swamp, running their first practice round for the upcoming time attack raid. This was just a trial, a warm-up to get a feel for the terrain and timing. To achieve a perfect score in both solo and duo modes, the system demanded he clear each dungeon in under a minute. Solo runs weren't an issue for Kim. He could easily handle those. But duo challenges required balance and coordination. He considered teaching Yi in the fixed spawn patterns of the swamp's goblins, a trick that would let her speedrun it with precision, but ultimately decided against it. Giving her a shortcut wouldn't help her grow. She needed to learn the rhythm of the battlefield on her own. After a few minutes of running and blasting through waves of goblins, they reached the flooded den, home of the swamp's boss, the Flood Goblin King. Before engaging, Kim asked Yi-in whether she wanted to play it safe with dodges or go all in with a full assault. With a bonus of 120 points on the line for defeating the boss, there was no reason to hold back. Kim positioned himself strategically, using his hummingbird spell to keep the boss distracted while Yi-in set up her shots. The goblin, however, wasn't stupid. It refused to take the bait and avoided exposing its weak points. Still, the constant electrical hum of the hummingbird drew its attention long enough for Yi-in to line up a clean shot. Her rifle boomed, and the bullet struck the goblin right on the back of its bald head, but the damage was minimal. All she managed to do was make it angrier. Roaring with rage, the flood goblin swung its massive blade wildly, splattering mud and sludge in every direction before locking onto Yi-in. In close range, her rifle became almost useless. Yet, she didn't panic. She trusted Kim. With calm precision, she steadied her aim again as Kim activated Amplify, boosting the hummingbird's rank from E to C for a brief moment. The spell's energy surged. The bird grew larger, its lightning sharper, and its paralyzing field exponentially stronger. As the creature lunged forward, the hummingbird dove in, electrifying the goblin mid-swing. Paralyzed and convulsing, it froze long enough for Yi-in to pull off a perfect 5-meter critical shot that finished the fight cleanly. Their practice run was a success. Combining their remaining time, kill bonus, and clear points. They scored an impressive 649 points, a major improvement from their previous attempts. Even so, Yi-In wasn't satisfied. She asked Kim to demonstrate that magic shot technique again, the one that amplified her bullets mid-flight. Her competitive streak was impossible to ignore. She hated that her first shot hadn't finished the boss instantly. Kim admired her drive. She wasn't just talented, she was relentless. To help her refine her technique, he led her to the training center's shooting range. There, he began a hands-on lesson about a skill known as discharge. He explained that while her mana bullets were already top tier in raw power, she was using them inefficiently, treating them as mere projectiles rather than extensions of her mana flow. He formed a glowing mana sphere between his fingers and shaped it like a gun, demonstrating the precise timing required to release energy at the exact point of maximum tension. With a sharp snap of his fingers, he fired the orb forward, a clean, flawless execution of discharge. The key, he said, was all about micro-adjustments, tiny control shifts that multiplied both power and speed. When Yi-In tried to imitate him, her first attempt went comically wrong. Instead of firing forward, the mana shot blasted backward, barely missing her own shoulder. For someone with her reputation, she lacked some pretty basic fundamentals. To make it easier, Kim adjusted the lesson, telling her to focus on regular mana shots instead of forming full bullets. Her assignment was to perfect those before moving on. Leaving her to practice, Kim decided to grab something to eat and promised to bring her food. As he was heading out, Yi-In casually handed him a black credit card, telling him to use it for the meal. Judging by the shimmer of the card, it was obvious she came from serious money, the kind of wealth that screamed high-class lineage. At the cafeteria, Kim made full use of her generosity, ordering a little bit of everything just to sample the menu. While waiting at the counter, he felt someone's eyes on him. Looking up, he noticed Han So-min, the swordswoman from the Ruby Tower, staring from across the room. A few tables away, Song Chun-hai, the Thunderlord's granddaughter, bit down on her metal fork so hard that it snapped in half. Collecting herself, Chun-hai stood abruptly and walked toward him. Apparently, there was something she had been meaning to confirm for days. Reaching him, she asked to see his hand, her expression unreadable. Kim simply raised an eyebrow, silently wondering what kind of storm was about to start this time. The mysterious thief who had unleashed Inferno Fist during the storage raid was still at large, and the disciplinary committee had yet to find a single lead. However, when Song Chun-hai caught wind of the report that the culprit had used the hummingbird skill with remarkable precision, as well as being acquainted with the thieves' club, her suspicions immediately zeroed in on one person. She already knew someone who fit that profile perfectly. So, when the opportunity presented itself in the cafeteria, she decided to investigate in her own unique way. Disguising her intentions under the pretense of palm reading practice, she cheerfully asked Kim Ho if she could read his fortune through his hands. Feigning surprise, Kim played along, pretending to be flustered by her sudden and odd request. He lifted his right hand, letting Chun-hai examine it closely. Her eyes darted across his palm, inspecting every inch for traces of burned scars or mana residue, anything that could prove his connection to Inferno Fist. When she found nothing, she frowned, visibly frustrated. Not satisfied, she demanded to see his other hand. Kim smirked inwardly but complied, raising his left hand. Again, she examined it thoroughly, running her fingers across the skin, but once more, there wasn't a single mark. His palms were perfectly clean, no evidence whatsoever. Chun-hai froze for a moment, still holding onto his hand as confusion clouded her face. Her theory had been flawless. Kim had to be the one, yet the lack of proof threw her completely off balance. Realizing how awkwardly long she'd been holding him, she quickly pulled back, her cheeks burning as she stammered something incoherent before hurrying away. To make matters worse for her pride, Kim teasingly asked what his fortune said, specifically about his love life. Annoyed, Chun-hai snapped that he had hard times ahead and stomped off in a flustered rage. Despite her suspicions, Kim's cool composure and her own embarrassment ensured that she dropped the matter for now. He had played the encounter perfectly, diverting her suspicion without giving away a thing. The following morning, Kim Ho and Seo Yi-In were back at it again, running yet another speedrun simulation through the Goblin Swamp dungeon. This time, Yi-In had swapped her sniper rifle for dual pistols, a risky but effective change that let her rain down a rapid barrage of mana-infused bullets. The sheer volume of her attacks shredded through goblin ranks like a storm of fireflies. Kim, as usual, handled the supporting side of the operation, deploying his hummingbirds to paralyze and distract enemies while Yi-In focused purely on offense. Her shots were sharper now, faster, cleaner, and significantly stronger than before. Her mana bullets even pierced goblin weapons mid-swing without slowing down. When the final boss, the Flood Goblin, fell with a ground-shaking thud, the system tallied their performance. Between the time bonus, kill count, and clear score, their final total came to 728 points. It was a near-flawless run. Kim smiled and told Yi-In that she had done an incredible job, noting how seamlessly she'd integrated everything she'd learned from their last training session. For the first time since he'd met her on that train, he saw something rare. Yi-In smiled back, a small but genuine grin that briefly broke through her usual sleepy demeanor. Later that day, the duo arrived at the arena, where hundreds of students were preparing to enter the teleport gates for the solo dark dungeon trials. Kim glanced at Yi-In, confident that she'd be fine. After all, she had cleared a double dungeon before. It was his own test he needed to focus on now. Once the countdown ended, the notification appeared, and Kim immediately activated his power. He lunged forward, unleashing a single blazing punch that obliterated the entire pack of goblins in front of him. The shockwave left a smoking crater where they once stood. As the dust settled, new notifications flooded his vision. Time: 4 minutes 42 seconds. Elite monsters defeated: 120. Remaining time: 728. Bonus: 448 points plus extra 500 points. Total score: 948. Kim nodded, satisfied. Even though the dungeon was just a simulation, he couldn't help but think he might have gone a little overboard. Before leaving, he made sure to reset everything to avoid raising any unnecessary alarms. The final report confirmed the completion of his Week 2 side mission, showing both his solo and duo scores had reached the highest possible reward tier. The system prompted him to select his bonus, offering enhancement-based recovery skills, illusion and debuff techniques, and wind-type mana traits. Kim didn't hesitate. This was exactly what he'd planned for. He selected the West Wind Blessing, a comprehensive support trait that improved agility, mana circulation, and ranged skill potency. The system confirmed his choice, marking another step forward in his long-term build. As Kim exited through the teleport gate, he immediately noticed two figures waiting for him: Ma Kyung-hwa, the master of the Emerald Tower, and Cyan, head of the Nature Club. Both stood composed but curious. Young-hwa's expression was sharp and measured, while Cyan's carried an oddly warm calmness. They politely requested a private audience with him, and a short while later, the trio sat together in the cafeteria. Cyan began the conversation by offering a sincere apology for the earlier incident involving her club members. She assured him that the reckless behavior of her subordinates didn't reflect her leadership. Then she asked if she could see the items she heard about. Kim-ho agreed and summoned his box. As she spoke, Tiger Lily suddenly perked up. Its ears twitched, and before anyone could react, it leapt onto Kim's table and dived straight toward the cube of life in Kim's hands. The cat snuggled up against it contentedly, as if drawn to its vibrant life energy. Cyan's eyes widened in fascination. She instantly recognized the aura radiating from the cube. When she asked to see the item's details, she promised, with the full honor of the Nature Club, that she would keep the information completely confidential. Kim hesitated for a moment but eventually nodded. There was no harm in letting her see the surface-level description, especially since her club was deeply connected to life-based magic. Right after reading the Cube of Life's full description, Ma Kyung-hwa was completely stunned. The item's effects were far greater than he'd imagined, amplifying the strength of life-type artifacts by 1.3 times and even extending their overall lifespan. It wasn't just rare, it was one of a kind. Cyan, standing beside him, was equally astonished, recognizing immediately that such a relic could shift the balance between factions if used correctly. Breaking the silence, Cyan gently suggested that perhaps Kim-ho would consider selling the artifact, assuring him that the Emerald Tower could make a generous offer. Kim, however, stayed calm and noncommittal, explaining that he hadn't yet decided. Just possessing something like this carried immense value on its own. Noticing his hesitation, Young-hwa puffed his chest with false confidence and declared that the cube would shine far brighter in the hands of someone who truly understood its potential. He urged Kim not to waste such power on himself and to entrust it to the tower instead. Kim smiled faintly, neither accepting nor refusing, maintaining his composure as he replied that he understood the point, but needed time to think things over. At that, Cyan sweetened the offer. She promised that if he agreed, the tower would provide something of equal worth in return. Kim's mind raced, realizing the opportunity he'd been waiting for had just presented itself. Without missing a beat, he coldly stated his terms: 4 season passes to the Academy's elite mana training chamber, 1 physical season pass, and compensation equal to 3 more in value, as well as 1 blank skill book. Both tower leaders froze at the demand. Young-Hwa's face twisted in disbelief before he slammed his palm against the table, declaring that Kim's request was outrageous. He accused him of greed, his voice rising in anger. Cyan, although more composed, agreed that while the training passes were negotiable, the blank skill book was far too valuable to be given away so easily. Unfazed, Kim shrugged and simply said that if they weren't interested, he'd withdraw the offer entirely. That calm, dismissive tone made Cyan hesitate. As Kim turned to leave, a voice called out from behind him. Nari, the druid of the nature club, had been silently observing the entire exchange. She stepped forward, admitting that she actually possessed a blank skill book of her own. However, she confessed that she'd never found a skill worthy enough to inscribe into it. It had been collecting dust in her inventory, likely to stay there forever. As she spoke, her small feline companion brushed against the cube of life, purring in delight, which made her smile faintly. Seeing her cat so content, Nari decided that perhaps this was fate. She presented the blank skill book to Kim with a gracious nod, saying that it would be better in his hands than locked away in hers. The trade was completed swiftly and without conflict, a deal smoother than any he'd made so far. Kim thanked her, appreciating how neatly everything had fallen into place. He now had exactly what he wanted. But before he could leave, the quiet atmosphere shattered as Jun, one of Young-Hwa's subordinates, abruptly stood up. His face burned with anger as he shouted a challenge, demanding that Kim face him in a one-on-one duel to restore the tower's honor. Kim, calm as ever, declined without hesitation, saying the fight was unnecessary and a waste of time. Jun clenched his fists, insisting that a duel was a matter of pride. Kim responded with cutting sarcasm, questioning how someone who relied on ambushes and teamwork against a single opponent could speak of honor. The jab landed hard, leaving Jun speechless, his jaw tightening in humiliation. Kim turned away, saying he had no time for pointless theatrics and invited Jun to brag all he wanted after he was gone. As Kim made to exit, Young-Hwa stepped in, unwilling to let the situation end so easily. With a confident smirk, he produced a VIP arena ticket, placing it on the table. The ticket gleamed with golden light, an irresistible reward. He asked Kim if he truly believed walking away was worth losing a prize of that magnitude. Kim paused, glancing at the ticket. The corner of his mouth lifted into a subtle grin. He accepted the challenge, setting the duel for 2 days later, explaining that he needed time to master something first. Young-Hwa chuckled, calling his words overconfident, claiming 2 days wasn't nearly enough time to create or refine a skill. Kim simply told him to wait and see, leaving the tower's members stewing in disbelief. 2 days later, the academy arena was packed to the brim. Students filled every seat, eager to witness the long-awaited match between Kim Ho and Jun, the rising freshman versus the Emerald Tower's elite fighter. In the crowd, Kim's allies watched with mixed feelings. Dan Ji-Yu-Young, leader of the Thieves' Club, crossed her arms, clearly uneasy. She muttered that Kim must have known what he was doing but couldn't shake the feeling that Young-Hwa had a plan. Byung-Chul, ever the optimist, said that Kim wouldn't have agreed unless he already had a counter-strategy. Still, an air of tension hung over them. Ji-Yu-Young told her crew to stay alert. If the tower tried anything shady, they'd intervene. Down in the arena, Jun fastened his combat gloves and cracked his knuckles, his expression sharp. He praised Kim for having the guts to show up instead of backing out, though his tone dripped with condescension. Kim, meanwhile, looked perfectly calm, mentally focused on what mattered, that VIP ticket. He wasn't about to walk away from something so valuable. From the viewing platform, Young-Hwa addressed the crowd, announcing that the match would be recorded and archived so everyone could replay it later. Both fighters agreed to the terms. A moment later, the system's voice echoed through the arena. Match type: deathmatch. Duration: 10 minutes. Participants: Kim Ho vs. Kwok Ji-Chul. The world shifted in an instant. The two combatants were transported into a desert domain. As the countdown ended, the fight began. Jun launched forward first, confidence radiating from every movement. He told himself that this time, he'd crush Kim and prove his superiority once and for all. But Kim didn't waste words. Instead, he lifted his hand, a faint glow sparking at his fingertip. In a flash, a blast of power surged forward, a strike so fast that Jun barely saw it before it hit him square in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The impact rattled through the dusty field. Gasping, Jun staggered back to his feet, gritting his teeth as he realized his opponent wasn't holding back. He tried to regain momentum, summoning jagged rocks around him with the spell Earth Cluster, and hurled them toward Kim. But Kim anticipated every movement, With fluid precision he used wind magic to dodge and then redirect the strike back at Jun, flipping his own attack against him. The resulting explosion engulfed the area, leaving Jun sprawled on the ground again, dazed but still conscious. Groaning in frustration, Jun forced himself up, his pride burning brighter than the pain. He admitted that Kim was strong, stronger than he'd ever expected, but claimed that the real fight was only just beginning. Channeling his mana, he summoned a colossal wooden construct, a towering golem infused with ancient forest energy. The earth trembled as the giant took shape, bark and vines twisting around a core of mana. The arena crowd roared as the massive figure loomed behind Jun, signaling the start of the battle's next phase. From the stands, Dan Ji Young clenched her fists, fury rising at the sight. The wooden monster's aura was unmistakable. This was an A-rank combat summon, a skill far beyond what was permitted in a friendly match. Her anger boiled over, and she shouted in outrage, realizing that the Emerald Tower had come to play dirty. Bang Chul tried to calm Ya Yu Yang, but his words only fueled her irritation. Her glare shifted to a third-year observer standing nearby, blaming him for letting things escalate this far. In contrast, Young Woo stayed composed, his attention fixed on the arena below. Internally, he noted that while he had hoped the wooden giant wouldn't be summoned, if they crushed it themselves, they wouldn't face much scrutiny. Meanwhile, Ya Yu Yang's mind raced. With so many spectators, she couldn't risk exposing her Inferno Fist ability. She debated stepping in, but before she could act, Kim's calm expression stopped her. Inside the arena, Kim faced his towering opponent without a hint of fear. Across from him, Ji Chul taunted confidently, convinced victory was already his. Kim's eyes, however, were distant, his thoughts drifting back to 2 days prior, during his quiet hours in the mana training room. Back then, he had contemplated the true essence of support magic, whether healing, enhancement, or weakening, and realized that the best skill always depended on the situation. For a balanced fighter like him, adaptability was everything. That realization guided his choice when inscribing his new spell into the blank skillbook, the one he now prepared to unleash. Back in the present, Ji Chul roared and sent the wooden giant charging forward. The colossal creature's steps shook the arena, but Kim's movements were fluid, calm, almost effortless. He evaded each strike, sprinting up the giant's arm before launching himself high into the air. As he reached its head, Kim's thoughts sharpened. The wind-type support skill he had crafted wasn't just about speed or power, it was designed for synergy. The perfect skill for someone blessed by the west wind. In a flash, he struck. A concentrated blast of wind exploded from his fist, tearing through the giant's body and shattering it into splinters. The remains scattered like leaves in a storm. A system prompt appeared before him. Wind force activated, physical strength amplified through wind energy, enhanced by the blessing of the west wind and boosted by amplification. The scoreboard updated instantly, displaying Kim Ho, victory. The crowd erupted. Cheers filled the arena as his friends jumped to their feet, shouting in excitement at the flawless display. The swift defeat of the wooden giant left even seasoned students stunned. From the stands, Mok Young-hwa's expression darkened. He clenched his jaw in silent frustration but could not deny the result. Moments later, he descended into the arena and, keeping his composure, handed Kim the promised VIP ticket. Kim accepted it politely. He then suggested that the match replay remain private, reasoning that the Emerald Tower might prefer to keep this embarrassment off record. Young-hwa's subordinates, including Sung Yi, protested, demanding to know what Kim wanted in exchange. With a cool smile, Kim simply replied that all he required was a small favor in the future. Young-hwa, without looking at him, muttered his agreement, thus sealing the arrangement. As the two left the stage, Kim's expression remained neutral, though his mind was already working. Outwardly, the exchange seemed fair, but in truth, his motive was simple. Maintaining control over the replay meant keeping his techniques hidden for now. The fewer people who understood what he was capable of, the better. Once outside, Kim quietly tested wind force again, feeling the subtle swirl of air around his palm. He smiled faintly, satisfied with its precision. Keeping the new power secret would grant him a serious edge moving forward. Soon after, Yun-woo appeared, congratulating him with genuine enthusiasm. In response, Kim handed him the season pass ticket, fulfilling his earlier promise. Yun-woo's eyes widened in disbelief, and he couldn't help but joke that Kim really did keep his word. The two exchanged a few teasing remarks before laughter broke the tension. Before long, Ya Yu-yang approached, her excitement barely contained. She praised his performance and sharp negotiation with Young-hwa, calling it a masterstroke. Kim brushed off the compliment, keeping quiet until she calmed down. When the conversation turned serious, he reminded her of the favor she owed. She nodded, acknowledging it without hesitation, and then mentioned that the Magic Engineering Club had expressed interest in meeting him. That caught Kim's attention immediately. The timing couldn't have been better. Later that day, Kim arrived at Magic Engineering Workshop No. 1, a far cry from the cramped, dimly lit Workshop No. 4 where he had received the cube. The air here thrummed with magical energy, and intricate machinery lined every wall. It was the heart of the Academy's innovation, refined, efficient, and full of prestige. Before he could fully take in the surroundings, a third-year student approached, introducing himself as Bong Jae-sok, the president of the Magic Engineering Club. He explained that Ya Yu-yong had informed him about Kim's work and motion for him to follow. Sensing urgency, Kim complied quietly. Inside the club's private office, they sat opposite one another. Jae-sok brought up the Cube of Life, clarifying that, technically, it was a project belonging to their club. However, he added that he didn't want unnecessary conflict, only verification. He requested to see the completed cube, emphasizing that no one but Kim could have created such a complex item. To his surprise, Kim calmly informed him that he no longer possessed the cube. Jae-sok froze for a moment before frustration overtook him. He rose sharply, saying that if the item was gone, the discussion was meaningless. Before he could storm out, Kim placed a stack of documents on the table. The third year's anger turned to curiosity as he cautiously unfolded the papers. His eyes widened as he realized what he was looking at, the blueprint of the 10x10x10 cube. Sweat formed on his brow as he flipped through the pages, studying the intricate diagrams and formulas. Though incomplete, the work was undeniably brilliant. After a long pause, Jae-sok asked whether Kim still had the remaining sections. Kim nodded, confirming their existence. The senior's tone softened instantly, and he urged Kim to name his price. Kim requested only one thing: access to Workshop No. 1's equipment, with unrestricted use from midnight until dawn. Jae-sok thought for a moment before agreeing, granting daytime access as well, though limited. In return, Kim handed over a few additional schematics to finalize the deal. As the agreement concluded, Jae-sok's curiosity turned to respect. He asked if Kim had ever considered joining the Magic Engineering Club, praising his craftsmanship and foresight. Kim declined politely, explaining that his interests lay elsewhere. Accepting the answer, Jae-sok smiled faintly and told him he was welcome to use the workshop's surplus materials whenever needed. With that, the senior departed, leaving Kim alone in the silent workshop, surrounded by tools, half-finished constructs, and endless potential. Kim Ho watched Jae-sok leave the workshop with a faint, satisfied smile. The meeting had gone exactly as planned: clean, simple, and productive. With the foundation now laid, he knew the real work was only beginning. The time had come to start crafting his ultimate weapon. Meanwhile, inside the Academy's medical ward, tension filled the air as the disciplinary committee debated the fallout from the duel. A bespectacled member leaned toward Ma Kyung-hwa, urging him to reconsider his harsh stance against Kim Ho. He reminded him that it was extraordinary for a first-year student to even survive against a wooden giant, let alone defeat a third year. Kyung-hwa, however, was unmoved. He stated coldly that regardless of skill, the event had stained the Emerald Tower's reputation. Though he admitted that some of his subordinates had overstepped their authority, he doubted Kim Ho could have acted alone. His frustration grew as the discussion continued, and he snapped at the committee for interfering in what he called an internal tower matter. The glasses-wearing member remained calm, explaining that they only sought a fair resolution. After a long, tense pause, he suggested an alternative: to grant Kim Ho a 2-month challenge period, where his ranking performance would determine the committee's final judgment. Kyung-hwa eventually agreed, muttering that 2 months was more than enough for the truth to reveal itself. As he turned to leave, he called out sharply to Song Chun-hai, who had been lingering nearby. Unbeknownst to him, the brown-haired disciplinary officer had overheard every word while hiding behind the wall. Embarrassed at being caught, she stepped forward, asking if he had known she was there all along. He smirked, saying that her sneaky habits hadn't gone unnoticed since the match. He then asked her opinion of Kim Ho, whether she believed she could defeat him. Chun-hai hesitated, admitting she wasn't sure. When he pressed further, she confirmed that she had personally checked both of Kim's hands after the match and found not even a scratch. That revelation gave him pause. He thought grimly that if Kim had truly used the Inferno Fist, his hands should have been charred beyond recognition. The speed of recovery didn't add up. Was Kim Ho really the same person he had faced before, the one with that arrogant, unshakable gaze that made him feel small? The doubt gnawed at him. Suppressing his irritation, he ordered Chun-hai to continue keeping an eye on Kim. She responded firmly that there was no need to apologize or explain. She intended to watch him closely regardless and promised to catch him the moment he slipped up. By Monday of the third week, normal academy life resumed. During homeroom, the teacher announced the theme for the week: cooperation. This time, the focus was on identifying weaknesses in teamwork rather than individual ability. To encourage this, the academy had organized a mentorship program, pairing students with top-ranking seniors or even accomplished alumni. The teacher advised everyone to consider the opportunity carefully and ended the announcement without further elaboration. After class, Young-woo turned to Kim-ho, asking if he had already registered. Checking his system interface, Kim confirmed that his application was submitted under his name and explained that it was too good an opportunity to ignore. Mentorships like these, he said, were rare chances to learn directly from the strongest. Young-woo nodded enthusiastically and declared that he would register as well, sending a quick message of thanks to Kim for the encouragement. Kim then looked toward Seo Yi-in, who sat half asleep at her desk. When asked if she planned to join, she yawned and mumbled that it sounded like too much effort. Kim studied her quietly, thinking that while she showed potential, especially with her gas grenade tactics, her lack of drive was a serious weakness. He made a mental note to find a way to push her toward participation. Moments later, Young-woo's face brightened with a new idea. He suggested that he and Kim team up for the week's upcoming matches. Kim smiled faintly and agreed, saying that working together again would be beneficial. Just then, Yi-in stirred and, rubbing her eyes, lazily asked if she could also partner with him. Young-woo laughed awkwardly and proposed that since there were 2 matches scheduled, each of them could pair with Kim once. Yi-in shrugged, saying that arrangement was fine. Kim simply sighed inwardly, wondering when his opinion had stopped mattering. Before heading off, Young-woo cheerfully announced that he needed to get in some early practice and told Kim to go on ahead. Kim gave a short nod, replying that he'd see him the next day. The following morning, Young-woo jogged over to meet him, apologizing for being late. Kim waved it off, saying he had just arrived himself, the calm start of another day in a week that promised far more than any of them yet realized. Kim-ho immediately noticed that Young-woo seemed different that morning, his energy sharper, his presence more controlled. It was as if he had grown stronger overnight. When Young-woo caught his gaze, he smiled and said he was eager for the match ahead. Sensing his friend's progress, Kim-ho quietly noted that Young-woo's power core had already advanced to rank C, much faster than expected. Trying to keep things casual, Young-woo joked about Kim's recent match with Seo Yi-in, asking if everything had gone smoothly. Slightly embarrassed, Kim scratched his head and admitted that they had won, though he left out the messy details. His thoughts drifted back to the previous day's duel. In the arena, Kim-ho stood across from 2 new opponents, a red-haired girl and a boy wielding a heavy shield. As he took his stance, his opponent then had been Hong Yi-in-hwa, the prodigy of the Ruby Magic Tower. Seo Yi-in had been his partner. Why he hadn't expected much from her at the time against such a rising prodigy, believing the gap in skill was too wide. But the result had been even more one-sided than anticipated. A system window flashed in front of him. Seo Yi-in's performance rate, 81% to 78% to 74%. He sighed inwardly, realizing his prediction had been correct. Still, Yi-in had potential. She just needed to stop relying solely on offense. From afar, she took her position, raising her rifle with careful precision. Watching her movements, Kim-ho immediately recognized her biggest flaw: no defense whatsoever. Without hesitation, he dashed forward. Mana surged through his arm as his staff glowed. In one smooth strike, he slammed into the shield bearer, sending him sprawling across the floor. The red-haired mage froze, panic flashing in her eyes as Kim turned his staff toward her. Back to the present, he checked his system panel, reflecting on how much he had invested in his teammates, even pushing Yi-in to join the mentoring program she had brushed off. Shaking his head, he reminded himself there was only so much he could do. Kim mentioned this, and Young-woo chuckled awkwardly, saying Yi-in probably needed a reality check to learn discipline. But there was something sharper in his tone than usual, a trace of irritation that made Kim glance at him curiously. Before he could comment, a system notification interrupted them. Match found. Young-woo's eyes lit up with anticipation. He declared that he was ready to show the results of his training. Moments later, light enveloped them, and both were teleported into a new arena. Across the field stood their next opponents, Seo Yi-in and Jang Sam. Another system window popped up, displaying their stats. Jang Sam 572 points. Seo Yi-in 741 points. Young-woo blinked in disbelief, muttering that fate really enjoyed setting them against familiar faces. Kim-ho, on the other hand, smiled faintly. This was the perfect chance for Yi-in to confront her weaknesses. When Yun-woo asked if they could win, Kim Ho answered confidently that they could. As the countdown began, he immediately charged towards Seo Yi-in. Yun-woo followed right behind him, determined to keep up. Yi-in reacted quickly, throwing down a smoke grenade that blanketed the entire area. Kim Ho smirked inwardly, exactly as he predicted. He continued forward through the haze, ignoring her attempt to obscure visibility. Yi-in's pulse raced. She fired several rounds into the fog, but Kim dodged every bullet with ease. Within seconds, he closed the distance, knocking her weapon aside with his staff. Mana gathered in his fist, but instead of striking, he stopped mid-motion and lightly flicked her forehead. She froze, then quietly admitted defeat, unable to meet his eyes. Her pride was clearly wounded, but Kim offered no comment. Turning away, he noticed something strange. Jang Sam's right hand twitched unnaturally. From the start, his movements had seemed off, but now it clicked. He shouted for everyone to stop, his tone calm yet commanding. All eyes turned to him in confusion. Kim accused the opposing team of holding back their true power. He said he'd been fighting seriously from the beginning and challenged them to do the same. Then, with a calculated grin, he offered an incentive. If they won, he'd tell them the truth about the invisible spirit. The name struck Jang Sam like lightning. His composure broke, and he demanded to know how Kim Ho knew about it. Smiling, Kim said he'd only reveal more if they proved themselves. Jang Sam's grip tightened around his sword as his demeanor shifted completely. He declared that if Kim wanted a serious fight, he would get one. His aura flared violently. Yun-woo mirrored his resolve, saying he was ready to give his all. The battle resumed with even greater intensity. Notifications flashed repeatedly as Jang Sam unleashed a relentless barrage of attacks. Yun-woo 87% to 73% to 68%. Despite being pushed back, Yun-woo refused to falter. Jang Sam, observing carefully, decided it was time to end it. As Jang Sam's final strike came crashing down, Yun-woo steadied himself. With a calm breath, he activated rapid flow, sidestepping at the last possible second. His counterattack was instantaneous, a precise strike that stunned Jang Sam completely. The clash ended with both swords shattered, their energy spent. Kim Ho stepped forward and declared the match over, his voice steady. He raised his hand, channeling a soothing current of mana that spread through the field, signaling peace. The system displayed the results. Kim Ho and Go Yun-woo, victory. Seo Yi-in and Jang Sam, defeat. Kim looked at the scoreboard with quiet reflection. Though the system marked it as a win, it didn't feel like one. The fight had been decided the moment Jang Sam exposed his trump card, and even then, his potential still fell short of mastery. When Jang Sam regained consciousness, he saw the results and silently accepted them. He admitted that, while disappointing, it had been a worthwhile match. Kim simply nodded in return. Before leaving, Jang Sam turned to Kim Ho and asked if his fighting style had been too predictable. Kim replied that it was, explaining that his swordplay, though solid, was too ordinary, making his movements easy to read. Surprised, Jang Sam asked if being too ordinary really made one predictable. Kim elaborated that in Satlung Academy, where the strongest gathered, mediocrity stood out more than brilliance, because everyone else fought with creativity and risk. Jang Sam paused to process this, then nodded in understanding. He bowed respectfully, thanking Kim for the advice, and before walking away, asked about a mysterious technique, ghost step. Kim only smiled faintly, the answer hidden behind his calm expression. Kim Ho told Jang Sam that questions like those should come only after a victory. Nearby, Go Yun-woo still lay unconscious, recovering from the match's toll. Once Jang Sam calmed down, he admitted that he wanted to challenge Kim again one day. Kim accepted without hesitation, promising to face him anytime he was ready. Moments later, Kim and Yun-woo were teleported back to the main arena. When Yun-woo finally came to, he looked embarrassed, apologizing for his earlier mistakes and asking for feedback. Kim reassured him kindly, saying that his probing attacks had been well-timed and his finishing strike clean and efficient. Still, Yun-woo glanced at his broken sword with unease, admitting he couldn't ignore the issue much longer. Sensing his concern, Kim half-joked that the solution was simple. He just needed a better sword. That comment made Yun-woo blush, silently reminding himself that his finances barely covered daily meals, let alone new weapons. Without hesitation, Kim pulled a small book from his inventory and handed it to him, explaining that not all weapons required money. Then he asked how many points Yun-woo had accumulated. After checking, Yun-woo reported roughly 5,000 points. Kim nodded and said it was more than enough, advising him to purchase both an E-rank weapon and a basic skill. Following the suggestion, Yun-woo bought a D-rank longsword and crafting materials called thermal catalysts. Once the system confirmed the transaction, Kim told him to hand the catalysts over. When Yun-woo asked what they were for, Kim explained that they were used in crafting and promised to help him forge something useful soon. He encouraged his friend to rest and focus on recovery for now. Grateful, Yun-woo smiled and thanked him sincerely. That night, Kim Ho made his way to workshop number 4, reflecting that the week's matches were finally over. The perfect time to prepare materials for Yun-woo's weapon. Inside, the familiar scent of metal and mana filled the air. His old acquaintance was there, hunched over a desk, fully absorbed in his work. The man barely acknowledged Kim's presence, only glancing briefly before returning to his project. Kim recalled Bong Jae-sok's strict warning about meddling in others' experiments, realizing his friend probably preferred silence. Still, Kim couldn't resist. Quietly apologizing in his mind, he began replicating a skill he had previously observed. A moment later, the system notification confirmed success. Another copied skill filled his remaining slot. Satisfied, Kim decided this would be the last one. He didn't need more for now. Scanning the cluttered room, his eyes caught piles of discarded devices. Failed prototypes left to collect dust. Most engineers saw them as trash, but Kim saw potential. Their cores still contained usable materials, and dismantling them could yield valuable resources. He rolled up his sleeves and started taking the devices apart. After a few minutes, his friend noticed and nervously asked what he was doing. Kim calmly explained that he was extracting materials for reuse. The other boy, curious, asked if he could observe, and Kim smiled, allowing him to watch. When Kim handed him a glass vial containing the purified fragments, his friend's eyes widened in awe. The materials looked spotless, as if freshly produced. Seeing an opportunity, Kim asked if he was willing to trade a few supplies. Excited, the boy immediately agreed, asking what Kim needed. Kim listed several rare components, but his friend hesitated, afraid that Bong Jae-sok would scold him again for unauthorized exchanges. Kim reassured him that it would be fine, and if there was any issue, he would take responsibility himself. Still nervous, the boy decided to send Jae-sok a message for approval. When no response came, he took the silence as a yes. Just as he began to relax, Jae-sok suddenly burst through the workshop door, drenched in sweat. His friend froze in panic, certain they were about to get scolded. Without a word, Jae-sok marched toward Kim and asked sharply whether he had been the one to dismantle the devices. Kim confirmed calmly. Jae-sok then pointed to another heavy-looking contraption nearby, a large, unfinished mechanism made from premium alloys. He explained that it was a failed project but had consumed an enormous number of resources. Challenging Kim directly, he asked if he could take it apart. Kim studied the complex device and realized the process would take a while. Jae-sok nodded, saying that if he succeeded, he would be properly compensated. Kim smiled faintly and said he preferred payment in materials rather than credits. Jae-sok accepted immediately, promising to prepare everything Kim needed once he received the list. Before leaving, he encouraged Kim to take his time and send the request via message. Kim bowed slightly and agreed. Once Jae-sok was gone, his friend hesitantly asked for a small favor. When Kim raised an eyebrow, the boy explained that another device elsewhere needed dismantling. Kim agreed without hesitation, appreciating the help in return. The boy promised to find any rare materials Kim might need later. The next morning came faster than expected. Entering the classroom, Kim thought about finishing a few workshop tasks after lessons. He even considered sneaking in a short nap before class started. To his surprise, Seo Yi-in was already there, sitting at her desk, unusually early for someone who often arrived late. Remembering how she'd left abruptly the day before, Kim approached and asked if she had skipped breakfast and whether she wanted something to eat. She didn't answer, her irritation written clearly on her face. Realizing she was still upset about their match, Kim tried to smooth things over. He explained that yesterday's fight had been one-sided, not out of malice but because he wanted to show her where she was weakest. He pointed out that her accuracy faltered whenever her opponent's position was revealed and that her mana bullets had become too predictable. He advised her to invest in a support skill this time, which instantly caught her attention. She asked if he planned to train her himself. Kim smiled and said that while he would like to help, she would benefit far more from learning under a specialized mentor. Finally, he encouraged her to sign up for the mentoring program. After a brief moment of hesitation, she nodded in agreement, quietly accepting his advice. Just then, Go Yun-woo arrived, cheerful as ever, and teased Yi-in about finally registering. The classroom atmosphere lightened. Another week of training and unexpected teamwork about to begin. Kim Ho supported Seo Yi-in's decision to register for the mentoring program, then turned to Go Yun-woo, asking how he was feeling. Yun-woo expressed gratitude, saying his body was in perfect condition thanks to Kim Ho's help, but he still worried about the new weapon he had bought and planned to test it during the next match. Kim suddenly took out a paperclip and told him to use it. When Yun Woo asked if the clip he had been given was just a regular one, Kim calmly explained that despite its simple look, it was actually a repair-type accessory that automatically maintained a weapon's durability. The system screen confirmed it, a sturdy clip designed to repair and protect weapons mid-battle. Kim attached it to Yun Woo's gear, suggesting he test it with the sword he had obtained earlier. Feeling reassured, Yun Woo thanked him sincerely and vowed to make good use of it. During the training matches, Yun Woo's team was paired against Park Nari, Jang Soo-ji, and their allies, all in peak condition. The atmosphere turned heavy as the match began. Yun Woo immediately recognized Nari from the Nature Club and recalled the warnings he'd heard about her spirit beast. When the match started, Nari calmly stroked the small cat perched on her shoulder, signaling it forward. In an instant, the creature leapt down and transformed into a towering tiger enveloped in swirling green energy. The beast roared and charged, shaking the arena as it slammed into Yun Woo's defenses. Reacting quickly, Yun Woo raised his sword to block, while his teammate Han Sol, a white-haired girl, countered with a powerful strike that shook the ground. But when the dust cleared, they realized the blow had barely scratched the tiger. Panic flashed in Han Sol's eyes. The beast's endurance was far greater than expected. Moments later, the tiger retaliated with a devastating swipe, sending Han Sol flying. Yun Woo called out in alarm but had no time to react as the creature turned on him next. The tiger's claws shattered his E-rank sword and sent him tumbling backward. Struggling to regain his footing, he summoned another blade, fully aware that defeating such a creature with low-tier gear would be nearly impossible. Still, he refused to give up. Han Sol regrouped beside him, suggesting a new plan. As the tiger's health bar regenerated back to full, Yun Woo quickly realized their opponent's strategy. The two support mages behind Nari were continuously restoring the spirit beast's vitality while leaving their caster completely unguarded. It was a clever setup, but also a weakness. Yun Woo pointed toward the tiger's core, urging Han Sol to focus on the supports while he drew the beast's attention. Both charged forward. Nari, anticipating this move, gripped a glowing crystal and activated a defensive spell. Instantly, massive trees erupted from the ground, forming a thick barrier around her team. Han Sol unleashed a freezing blast to shatter the wall, while Yun Woo followed up with a high-impact strike. However, the barrier held firm, the combined magic barely chipping away at it. Yun Woo gritted his teeth, realizing they'd need a single overwhelming strike to break through, one chance to turn the match around. But before he could act, the tiger reappeared from the shadows, striking with blinding speed. It tore through their defenses and knocked Han Sol out of the fight entirely. Yun Woo froze for an instant, then braced for the inevitable. The arena lights dimmed, and the system displayed the results. Park Nari's team, victory. The next day, Yun Woo couldn't shake the humiliation of defeat. He apologized to Kim Ho, calling it a pathetic performance. Kim calmly told him not to be so harsh on himself. The loss had been unavoidable given the opponent's caliber. When Yun Woo asked what Kim would have done differently, Kim explained that no amount of strategy could overcome such a difference in equipment. He elaborated that Park Nari, as a Nature Club prodigy, had access to high-grade gear and specialized relics. Recently, she had even obtained a rare treasure through a private trade, effectively making her untouchable in this tier. Hearing that, Yun Woo broke into a nervous sweat, realizing the match had been unwinnable from the start. Kim then advised that instead of trying to match her equipment, he should focus on counterplay. When Yun Woo asked if such a thing was possible, Kim mentioned a rare debuff weapon known as the Demon Sword, a blade favored by elite swordsmen for its unique curse properties. Yun Woo, intrigued, admitted he had never heard of it before. Kim pointed to the repair clip still attached to Yun Woo's uniform and explained that the first step was ensuring his weapon's longevity. Once durability was secured, he could focus on obtaining gear that enhanced combat efficiency, especially for B-rank weapons and above. Yun Woo frowned, saying such items were nearly impossible to acquire. Kim simply smiled and said there was another way. The Dungeon Association's underground zones sometimes dropped rare equipment as loot. Yun Woo immediately objected, noting that since it was the double season, students couldn't access underground dungeons. Kim explained that even next week would be restricted, as freshmen weren't allowed into real combat zones yet. When Yun Woo asked if there was truly no workaround, Kim replied confidently that there was, and officially, if they used Shin Bei and Chol's connections, they could sneak in without formal approval. Yun Woo quickly realized who Kim was referring to and agreed. Before long, Shin Bei and Chol appeared, as lively as ever. When Kim outlined the plan to enter dungeon number 388, Bei and Chol checked his notes and confirmed it was the Feathered Snake Altar, a D-rank dungeon for 4 people. Curious, he asked who would participate, and Kim stated it would just be him and Yun Woo. Though hesitant, Bei and Chul eventually agreed after Kim assured him it was safe and that they could retreat at any moment. Yunwoo backed him up, saying he trusted Kim's judgment completely. Bei and Chul smiled, saying compensation wasn't necessary, he still owed Kim from before and would help freely this time. He did, however, admit sheepishly that he had only entered a dungeon once in his life. Kim laughed quietly, reassuring him not to hold back or overthink it. Though slightly flustered, Bei and Chul promised to give his full effort. The plan was set. Monday evening, they would descend into dungeon number 388, the Feathered Snake Altar, to test both their courage and the durability of Yunwoo's newly forged resolve. Kim Ho proposed expanding their plan by adding a second dungeon, Dungeon 104, Black Snake, a B-rank dungeon known for its treacherous, multi-layered floors. Shin Bei and Chul immediately objected, saying it was far beyond their current level, but Kim calmly encouraged him to at least consult the headmaster. After some thought, Bei and Chul admitted it might not be impossible and promised to seek approval. He then confirmed their meeting for Monday evening before taking his leave. Once he was gone, Kim Ho turned to Go Yunwoo and suggested finalizing their strategy. Yunwoo eagerly agreed, asking what needed to be prepared. Kim explained that they would first enter the D-rank Feathered Snake Altar to collect Yunwoo's weapon and complete his own objectives. The following days, he added, would be dedicated to preparation, negotiating access to deeper dungeon levels with the Thieves' Club, securing critical items, and mastering dungeon mechanics. He warned that even one mistake in such places could mean death. Yunwoo assured him that he understood. Kim emphasized that his role was not only to fight but to maintain perfect coordination. He needed to know the dungeon as well as Kim himself. When Yunwoo saw the pile of thick guidebooks Kim had prepared, his jaw dropped. Kim smiled slightly and told him to memorize every word, stressing that nothing could be overlooked. Later that day, Kim worked quietly in workshop number 1, sorting through rare materials when Jae-Sok entered. The senior asked if Kim had managed to gather the floating stone extract, mana engine, and weather chip they had discussed earlier. Kim nodded, thanking Jae-Sok for his help and showing the completed set of materials on his desk. Jae-Sok noticed that Kim was wrapping things up and asked if he could take a look. Kim told him to wait until the final step was complete. A moment later, he finished assembling the parts and announced the work was done. Jae-Sok examined the structure with curiosity, saying that from its design it resembled the head of a staff or scepter, and asked if Kim had acquired the main body. Kim smiled and replied that he hadn't yet found a piece worthy of it but intended to search for one soon, perhaps in the lower levels of a dungeon. Jae-Sok then remarked that with the rainy season over, Kim would probably stop visiting the workshop as often. Kim thanked him for his support and said he would still drop by whenever possible. The next scene shifted to class 1 to 3, where the homeroom teacher introduced the week's new strategy mission. A holographic map of the stone area appeared on the board, accompanied by detailed instructions. The mission would be a 2-person dungeon run with completely random pairings. Students would earn points for defeating monsters and clearing objectives. There was no time limit, survival and awareness were key. The teacher reminded everyone that terrain and partners would be randomized, forcing them to adapt to new environments and cooperate with unfamiliar classmates. He encouraged them to approach the challenge with focus and teamwork before dismissing the class. Afterward, Yunwoo sighed, saying it looked like they wouldn't be paired together this week. Kim smiled and agreed. Everyone would be on their own this time. Seo Yi-in, half awake at her desk, mumbled that the monobullet lesson should be postponed and suggested focusing on strengthening basic techniques instead. Yunwoo nodded in agreement, while Yi-in silently went back to staring out the window. With a playful tone, Kim told them to try the training mode before the main mission. Inwardly, however, he found it pointless. Training mode was nothing but wasted time for him. As the teleport gate opened, Kim's expression hardened. He told himself he would skip the warm-up entirely and head straight into the mission. Inside the dungeon portal, the system notification blinked. Pairing in progress. Kim silently hoped for a capable partner, someone whose skills he could potentially copy. His system screen displayed his current skills: Magitech and Silent Step. Since Magitech wasn't useful in combat, he planned to replace it with something more practical. Just then, his teammate's name appeared, and the teleport light flared. A familiar red-haired girl stepped through the gate. Hong Yi-in-hwa. For a moment, Kim blinked in surprise, recognizing her from past matches. She looked equally stunned but far less pleased, visibly irritated to see him again. Kim wondered at her reaction but soon remembered why. Their history went back to the ranking exams and several PvP matches, most of which Yi-in-hwa had dominated. Perhaps she felt uneasy that they were now forced to cooperate. He smirked slightly, deciding that a bit of tension might work to his advantage. Confidence could unsettle people like her. When she hesitated to move, he encouraged her to keep up. Her eyes watered in frustration, but she reluctantly followed his lead. As they advanced, Yin-Hwa's irritation grew. She told herself she should have waited another day to take the mission rather than rushing into it just to protect her reputation. Watching Kim move ahead effortlessly, clearing monsters in silence, only made her more annoyed. Despite her frustration, she couldn't deny his efficiency. Every time she thought a monster was about to appear, it was already dead before she could react. She frowned, glancing at the system feed. No alerts, no resistance, just seamless progress. It unnerved her. There should have been monsters lurking everywhere, yet the corridors were eerily empty. When a goblin suddenly fell from above, she panicked, calling out for help. Kim didn't even look back, continuing forward without acknowledgement. Grinding her teeth, Yin-Hwa felt both insulted and furious. She activated her combustion skill and blasted the creature herself, flames crackling in the dim dungeon light. Despite her anger, she couldn't deny that Kim's precision and control were impressive, frustratingly so. Inwardly, she admitted that if he were willing to coordinate properly, they could make an unstoppable team. But outwardly, she kept silent, refusing to give him the satisfaction. Her irritation mixed with reluctant admiration, a feeling she hated even more than losing. Kim Ho moved swiftly ahead, glancing back in irritation as Yin-Hwa lagged behind. He thought to himself that she couldn't seriously believe she could handle the mission alone and told her to keep up. Hesitant but unwilling to argue, Yin-Hwa reluctantly followed, responding awkwardly though clearly uncertain about his confidence. As she watched him charge forward without pause, doubt crept into her mind. Something about his movements felt unnatural, too precise, too instinctive, as if he had already cleared this very dungeon countless times before. Suddenly, Kim Ho stopped and gestured toward a shadowy tunnel ahead, suggesting it might be a goblin den. Curious, he proposed they check it out. Peering at the small entrance, Yin-Hwa concluded that it was too narrow for a person to fit through and agreed that it was likely a goblin nest. But when Kim Ho told her to go inside and check, she froze in disbelief. Seeing her hesitation, he gave her a look that made it clear she had no choice. Nervously, she complied, crawling reluctantly into the tight opening. Kim Ho raised an eyebrow. He hadn't actually meant for her to enter. His plan had been for her to use a fire spell from outside the den. Before he could stop her, a flash of golden light burst from within the tunnel, followed by a deafening explosion. Dust filled the air, but Kim remained unfazed, remarking to himself that such firebursts were common in dungeons under Ruby Tower's domain. Moments later, Yin-Hwa crawled out, her face smudged with soot, muttering in frustration about the ordeal. Still, she admitted that finding and destroying the goblin nest was a stroke of luck. At least the creatures hadn't escaped. A system alert soon chimed, notifying them that only one monster remained. Kim Ho said that the last one would be the dungeon's boss, and as if on cue, a massive shadow emerged behind them. Reacting instantly, he grabbed Yin-Hwa and warned her to stay focused. Flustered, she apologized, blaming the earlier explosion for attracting the beast's attention. Before them stood a towering creature, the final guardian. Kim Ho told her this was their last challenge and suggested she face it head-on, assuring her that the battle would be manageable with proper teamwork. But instead of joining her, he took a step back and calmly announced that she should fight it alone. Yin-Hwa's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Panic flickered across her face, but Kim's steady gaze and calm tone made her hesitate. He said that she was capable of handling it and urged her not to retreat. Her heart raced, but his confidence stirred something inside her, determination. Resolute, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. Gathering mana at the tip of her staff, she activated Overheat, unleashing a blazing surge of energy. The boss roared in rage and lunged at her. Shocked by its speed, Yin-Hwa barely dodged the first strike. She retaliated by casting Flame Orb, launching it directly into the creature's chest. The orb hit dead on, and for a moment she thought she'd won, until the smoke cleared. The monster stood unscathed, its crimson eyes burning brighter. Frustration swept through her as she realized the dungeon might have a half-damage reduction property, making her magic less effective. The creature raised its massive axe and swung again. With no time to block, Yin-Hwa braced herself for impact. At the last second, Kim Ho dashed forward, casting a protective wind barrier that deflected the blow. Calm but firm, he reminded her not to let her guard down. Still catching her breath, Yin-Hwa whispered her thanks, but Kim waved it off and pointed toward her bag, telling her to use that instead. She hesitated, realizing he meant the item, the same one that had humiliated her during their first duel. Embarrassed, she muttered that its range was too short. Kim simply replied that he would restrain the boss while she focused all her strength into the spell. Before she could protest, Kim darted forward again, wind swirling around him as he cast Air Bind, trapping the monster in place. Understanding the plan, Yin-Hwa focused, summoning her Flame Pillar spell. The ground beneath them glowed as a magic circle formed. Noticing the sudden mana surge, the boss tried to break free. Kim tightened his control, struggling to hold it still. Yanhua saw his effort and shouted that the creature had detected the formation, but Kim told her to continue without hesitation. The monster thrashed wildly, but Kim forced it back into the center of the glowing rune. When it finally collapsed, Yanhua clenched her teeth, declaring that the setup was complete. Kim quickly retreated from the circle's range, standing a safe distance behind her. Yanhua's entire body trembled from the mana buildup. She focused all remaining energy into her staff, and with a final shout, released the flame pillar. A massive inferno erupted, engulfing the boss completely. The creature's final roar echoed before it disintegrated into ash. The system screen materialized above them. Monsters defeated, 0 remaining. Completion rate: 100% base points, 800, bonus, 200, total, 1000, multiplier 0.8 equals 800 points. Yanhua dropped her staff, breathing heavily and muttering that it was finally over. Kim Ho, standing behind her, thought quietly that she had performed better than expected, rough around the edges, but undeniably skilled. Still catching her breath, Yanhua turned toward him with hesitation. He asked what was wrong. Her face flushed slightly as she recalled the embarrassing moments earlier, crawling through the tunnel, falling into his arms after the blast. Trying to compose herself, she asked if he could set the battle replay to private. Amused, Kim tilted his head and asked for clarification. Yanhua avoided eye contact, mumbling that she'll pay him, and then hurriedly handed him a small ruby as a bribe. Kim accepted it, his expression unreadable. Kim Ho examined the ruby-edged crystal in his hand, his thoughts conflicted. A replay crystal was one thing, but this ruby was clearly far more valuable than necessary. It felt excessive for something as trivial as setting the dungeon footage to private. When Yanhua noticed his uncertain expression, she became irritated, demanding to know why he looked so dissatisfied and insisting it still wasn't enough. Before he could reply, she pulled out an even larger ruby from her inventory, pressing it toward him. Amused by her misunderstanding, Kim Ho gently declined, saying the first one was more than enough. Smiling, he told her she had worked hard. The unexpected praise caught Yanhua off guard. For a brief moment, she froze, wondering why he'd suddenly used her name like that. Trying to regain composure, she awkwardly stammered that he'd worked hard too before quickly walking toward the teleport gate, flustered. Watching her, Kim Ho sighed to himself, thinking she really didn't need to be so embarrassed. Despite her temper, he silently admitted that Yanhua's performance had exceeded expectations. The rumors about her rivaling the Academy's top talents weren't exaggerated. As he opened his system interface, the post-battle data confirmed it. Her overheat technique had enhanced her physical attributes dramatically. It was the perfect opportunity to copy one of her traits. Holding the ruby, he considered what to do with it and decided he'd need to bring it to the Ruby Tower for examination after visiting the dungeon's lower floors that night. Later, on the lower floor, Kim Ho stepped out from the teleport gate, checking his mission status. The system notification displayed. Week 4 submission complete. Dungeon objective cleared. Reward unlocked. Attribute copy +1 slot. A rare smile crossed his face. Finally, a new slot for copying abilities. This would make exploration far easier. His quiet satisfaction was interrupted by a familiar voice calling out for him to announce his arrival next time. Turning around, he saw Yun Wu and Byung Chul approaching. Byung Chul handed each of them a small metallic tie clip, explaining that it would mask their faces, rendering their appearances completely unremarkable. Even if senior students saw them, no one would recognize who they were. Testing it, Kim Ho remarked with surprise how blank his reflection looked. Yun Wu chuckled, saying it would make sneaking around much easier, while Byung Chul muttered nervously that something about this felt wrong. Kim Ho dismissed the thought and said they should get going. The three descended deeper into the dungeon, their voices echoing faintly against the stone walls. The tunnels twisted endlessly, each corner darker than the last. Yun Wu complained about how far they had gone, and Byung Chul reassured him they were close. When they finally reached the D-rank zone, Yun Wu marveled aloud at the vastness of the place, saying he hadn't expected the lower levels to stretch this deep. Kim Ho explained that normally there were instant teleport devices to travel between layers, but since they'd entered without authorization, those were inaccessible. Glancing at Byung Chul, he added that with enough skill, even those could be hacked. Byung Chul scratched his head awkwardly, promising they were almost at the target zone. At last, they arrived at the teleport gate of dungeon number 388 Feathered Snake Altar. Standing before the glowing sigil, they took a moment to breathe. Yun Wu remarked that it was fortunate they hadn't been caught sneaking in. Kim Ho nodded and reminded them of the strategy they'd memorized from the guidebook. Everything needed to proceed smoothly from this point. Just as they prepared to enter, a loud voice echoed from behind, startling all three. Two unfamiliar figures approached. A blue-haired girl and a tall boy. The girl grumbled about their failure to clear the previous run, and the boy complained about her strange magic skill. When they noticed Kim Ho's group, the boy frowned suspiciously, asking what they were doing there and whether they were also raiding the dungeon. Kim Ho grinned slightly, realizing the face disruption badge seems to be working. Once the pair left, Yun Woo muttered that they should move quickly before running into more groups. Byung Chul nodded but stopped to take out a cube-shaped device. He crouched, placed it on the ground, and activated it, saying that all defensive wards in the area had been disabled. With the security systems shut down, there was nothing to worry about for now. He added that he would stay outside to monitor for disturbances, while Kim Ho and Yun Woo entered first. Kim Ho agreed, saying they would finish the objective quickly. Inside, the dungeon was dim and heavy with stagnant air. Kim Ho urged Yun Woo to move without hesitation, pointing toward the temple ahead, the feathered snake altar, their main target. He warned that the area would be heavily guarded by barbarians, and they needed to stay alert. Just then, a tall figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing blood red, clutching a jagged spear. Before they could react, the weapon shot toward them with blinding speed. Both Kim Ho and Yun Woo dodged effortlessly, the spear embedding into the wall behind them. Kim Ho's expression hardened as more enemies appeared, barbarian warriors shouting to capture the intruders alive. The group quickly surrounded them. Calmly, Kim Ho remarked that if their orders were to take prisoners, they should probably stop throwing spears. Ignoring him, barbarians' warriors charged. Yun Woo unsheathed his sword, his stance low and steady. Kim Ho told him to stick to the plan. Yun Woo nodded, his eyes sharp with focus. Kim raised his hand, summoning a powerful gust of wind that blasted the enemies backward. Using the opening, Yun Woo dashed in, his blade cutting through the attackers in quick, precise arcs. Within seconds, many barbarians fell. Kim Ho glanced at Yun Woo and nodded approvingly before moving deeper into the dungeon. Yun Woo stayed behind, ready to intercept the reinforcements. Watching Kim disappear down the corridor, he muttered to himself to be careful, then gripped his sword tighter, prepared to hold the line. Yun Woo raised his sword and shouted with conviction that his opponents would fall by his blade. As his voice echoed through the dungeon, Kim Ho silently reaffirmed the plan in his mind. From this point onward, everyone had to follow it precisely. Yun Woo would head straight toward the altar, while Kim Ho would take a detour through the dense jungle to search for the hidden fragment that most players usually missed. The feathered snake altar could only be cleared under specific conditions. The adventurers had to break through the barbarians' defense, interrupt the ritual, and defeat both the tribe's high priest and the remaining warriors simultaneously. Following the main route could complete the dungeon normally, but only by exploring the off-path areas could one uncover the secret fragment. Kim Ho soon reached the outskirts of the barbarians' encampment, where smoke from their torches curled through the humid air. Most of the tribe had already gathered near the altar, leaving only a few behind. Despite their numbers, they seemed wary, clutching their crude weapons and bows. Spotting him, they immediately became alert, their leader barking an order to capture the sacrifice alive. Kim Ho smirked faintly, muttering that they had nothing else to say besides calling him an offering. He raised his hand, summoning a faint crimson glow as he began chanting a spell. The air trembled slightly under his magic. He demanded that they summon their chief, his voice sharp and commanding. He redirected their spear towards them, finishing them easily. Then he continued toward the central tent. Kim Ho advanced slowly, noting that everything was proceeding according to plan. Moving deeper into the camp, he stopped before a massive tent, much larger and more ornate than the others. Clearly the chieftain's quarters. A flash of light burst from within, and a golden beam shot straight toward him. Kim Ho dodged instinctively, the blast grazing past his shoulder. From inside, a tall figure emerged. Barbarian's chief, his body painted with ritual markings and his staff radiating golden energy. The chief remarked coldly that Kim Ho carried a strong aura, declaring that he would make an excellent offering to the gods. In one hand, he held a luminous orb, threatening that submission would grant him a painless end. The system interface flickered. Inferno Fist, Hell Fist, Overheat. Kim Ho's eyes hardened. So, the chief used sacred light magic, non-elemental and deadly even with a single hit. He quickly activated his Inferno Fist, his arms igniting with molten energy. He thought to himself that if everyone here insisted on calling him an offering, it was about time to prove otherwise. To obtain the hidden fragment, he needed to hold the chief here and buy Yun Woo time to reach the altar. Without hesitation, Kim Ho charged forward, flames roaring around his fists. The chief countered with a beam of golden light, which Kim barely avoided before closing the distance. The heat around his body intensified as he activated Overheat, pushing his physical limits to the extreme and absorbing the power of his own flames. Their clash was fierce. Kim's punch slammed into the chief's magical barrier, shattering a portion of it with explosive force. He followed with another strike, forcing the chief to block with both hands. The moment their powers collided, the impact sent the chieftain flying several meters backward. Kim Ho flexed his fingers, feeling the searing energy coursing through his veins. Overheat fused with Inferno Fist was overwhelming. A D-rank barrier had been destroyed with ease. But as the dust cleared, the chief stepped forward again, unscathed and furious. Kim Ho narrowed his eyes, noting that brute force alone wouldn't work. A searing beam suddenly shot past his face, cutting the air beside him. The chief growled that Kim would not die easily. Kim, unfazed, smirked and muttered that the man certainly looked angry enough. He darted sideways, weaving through the attacks with precision. The chief grew increasingly agitated as every strike missed. Kim intentionally held back, provoking him further. An angry opponent was easier to manipulate. Each time the golden light erupted, Kim dodged by a fraction, forcing the chief to overextend. He thought briefly of Yun Woo, hoping he was progressing as planned. His goal was to stall the fight, nothing more. The longer he kept the chief's attention, the greater their chance of success. Meanwhile, at the altar, Yun Woo was making steady progress. His expression was calm and cold as he stepped over the bodies of the fallen barbarian warriors, their weapons scattered across the stone floor. The ritual site loomed ahead, the final stage of the dungeon was about to begin.